This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Hot. I was discussing with the guest that we're going to have on tonight how hot it is, and I know it's hot, but I'm going to tell you guys what I told them. I was like, man, because you hear it's hot, hot, hot. The southern hemisphere, the other side of the equator on the earth, it's opposite season. It's the winter. So I said, you know what? Let me find somebody right smack in the middle, not too far south. Bolivia, South America. Okay. I checked on AccuWeather, and guess what? At night, it was dropping down to 25 degrees, which is below freezing. This is Fahrenheit. So it's like, this thing is like, okay, I know it's hot. And like I said before, growing up in South Florida, I'm used to hot. I can handle hot, and like I said, and sometimes I think, you know what, there was a lot of times growing up and even later in life where it was like, so in that moment, you're like, man, this is really hot. All right. And it's really hot, but again, I don't know if it's because I'm used to it. I'm acclimated to hot and humid. Is in South Florida, it's subtropical weather. That I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do things outside in the morning or right about now when the sun's going down. And if I don't have to go outside in the middle of the day, I stay away because it's really, really hot. And I think the worst part is when there's no breeze blowing. So yeah, I'm not saying I go out there and I decide to, let me tell you something. I look at sometimes people that work outside down the middle of the day and I'm like, oh, such a wimp. But you know what? Before you know it, it'll be winter. As a matter of fact, the other day, where was it? I saw them. They're already putting up, as of August 1st, Halloween stuff up. And I saw they had one of these spirit Halloween stores, the ones that they open up temporarily for the Halloween season in some, shop that's some vacant area. They're already opening them up. It was like, what? Wait a minute. Come on, Halloween? We're talking 3 months because Halloween, remember, is October 31st. So it's almost the entire month of, it's a 3 month. And it was like, huh? You could tell. But anyway, my point being that before you know it, we're rolling into the fall season, into all the holidays and all these moments of hot weather and, like overgrowth, which, yes, it's there, there'll be a distant memory and we'll go through the same cycle all over again. And then when I'm freezing my butt off, I'll be like, man, I wish it was hot. Such is human nature. You know what I'm saying? And let me tell you something, here in North Florida, believe it or not, it does get cold. There's no snow, luckily. But we do have days that it frosts over a lot, drops below the 32-degree Fahrenheit for freezing. And yeah, it gets cold, like same thing. I'm not going outside until the sun is up, until it gets hot. But anyway, let's get on to the good part. The good part is who the guest is today. He's been here before. His name is David Oman, and he is the owner of the Oman House that's located on Cielo Drive, and which is notorious due to the Tate-LaBianca murders committed by the Manson family in 1969.
Next week.
He's lived in this house for over 15 years.
21.
All right. And he's done a lot of recordings. He's had anomalies, unique geomagnetic anomalies, not only of the house, but on the land, because he built this house. And we'll talk about that, where it's situated on, and also that some of this appears to be a catalyst for the supernatural events. All right, that he's seen himself and other people that have come there to the house. He, as a matter of fact, I remember, and we'll talk about this again, but he started building this house back in '99. On Cielo Drive. This is, in other words, this is why we're going to talk about the land. This house was not there before. He built it, but you know how we talked about sometimes it's not even the house, it's the land that it's based on. And anyway, let me get him on so we could talk about exactly what's been happening. We spoke like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. What's been happening since then? Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Dave?
I'm very good, Marlene. How are you?
Great. Well, and we were talking that even now you still running, your videotaping or recording everything that's going on in and out. And I'm going to make a quick note. I think after we spoke the last time, Manson died, and I think they just released one of the little girls. Well, because back then she was a girl. They released her on parole. One of the ones that was involved in that, wasn't it?
Recently, yes, they released one of them. But at the time we were talking, Manson had died. Susan Atkins was trying to get parole for her inoperable brain tumor, and she died in jail.
Okay.
As recently, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, they released Leslie Van Houten.
Mm-hmm.
She was involved with the actual perpetration and commission of the crime at the LaBianca house the following night. Accordingly, she was the killer who put the pillow over Mrs. Rosemary LaBianca's face and stabbed her multiple times.
Right, because this is for people that are not up to date on the Manson murder. Supposedly, he never did anything. He just orchestrated it, supposedly.
He directed the murders, right? He basically ordered them, as they were said.
Right.
But at the LaBianca house, he actually entered the house first and had helped with tying the LaBiancas up. And then he left the house, and then he sent Leslie Van Houten and Tex Watson, and I forgot who else, in to commit the actual murders.
Right.
So legally speaking,
mm-hmm.
that's called being an accessory to the murders, because he was there. He was the first person in the house and helped wrangle them into their shackles, or so to speak, their restraints. So no, he did not put the knife into Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. But for all intents and purposes, he's tied directly to the commission of the crime by his actual appearance.
Right, because none of them, they were so much under his control, they would not have done or not done something unless he gave an approval. I take it that's the way they looked at it.
Well, I had a discussion with somebody else not too long ago about this, and they were willing participants. There's no such thing, as we found out in the past few years through the Freedom of Information Act,
mm-hmm.
regarding the CIA's practice of using LSD and other narcotic agents to create the perfect assassin, or as they were calling it,
like the Manchurian Candidate.
Manchurian Candidate, exactly, Marlene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's the scenario of the Manchurian Candidate, is basically having an individual that is under control of the CIA or a government, and through narcotics or hypnosis or whatever, they were trying to see if they could create the world's perfect assassin, meaning that person would be like basically a person that would just be any everyday Joe. They would call him up, say something to him,
right, like a trigger,
flip the switch, a trigger, and he would go into operative mode of going into his actions of being an assassin, committing the assassination, and upon the commission of the murder or the assassination, his mind would go blank and he wouldn't know anything of where he was.
Let me tell you, I was a hypnotherapist for many years, and I'm not sure what, I'm sure you've heard that MK Ultra, which is more than hypnosis if you go by what they describe it. But I'll tell you this much, because I spoke to a lot of people that came to me for hypnotherapy, that they were kind of like wigged out because they were thinking, man, this person, I told them, there's no hypnotist we're talking only hypnosis that can make you do something against your will or against something that you've heard of. Haven't you ever heard of people saying, I killed somebody, I was under hypnosis. I held someplace up because I was hypnotized. Sorry, that doesn't work. That doesn't exist.
Thank you.
That doesn't work.
It's a great cop out. It's like the excuse of, I killed somebody because I had a sugar rush because I ate a Twinkie. This was called the Twinkie defense.
The Twinkie. Yes, God, I heard that. Or the one that's that, sleepwalking, they sleepwalk and they do kill people or do stuff on their sleepwalk. It's like,
exactly.
Come on. Yeah, no. I know some people, like that thing about hypnosis is great, but man, they overrate it as far as making, because basically that's what they're talking about. Making somebody do something like that.
You cannot, what is it? You cannot, you can't go against your inherent will and desire of right and wrong. It will not make you do something that that is inherently wrong. Right. You know this is wrong. Therefore, if you get hypnosis, it's going to cross that T and cut it up. Right. That doesn't work. You have free will no matter what. You're not going to.
That they talk about that they, on purpose, they'll get people, especially, but you have to be young. This is usually, you have to start with children where you fracture their personality. Old terminology, multiple personality, where you disassociate, in order to, create this. Let me tell you something. Usually those people, by the time they go in to become adults, they're difficult to control. They're so messed up that this thing about it, they're going to be acting all normal and somebody's going to call them and I beg to differ. Usually people like that have a lot of problems fitting into society because of the abuse that they had to suffer to fracture them that way.
Exactly. And
so I don't know that part. I'm not going to say because I don't know. And, maybe they have some weird, I don't know, things that they do, but it's not as easy, I think, as people realize.
It isn't. And it's a cop out. Drugs, marijuana use, LSD, opium, mescaline, these were the things they were using.
Right.
Those things do not allow you to have the manipulative power of a puppeteer and a puppet. It doesn't work like that. And even 50 years ago, we haven't changed that much in 50 years.
Let me ask you something, Dave. Do you, because I've heard also, and I don't know you, and I'm sure maybe it's that also part of the problem might have been that there was a lot of drug sales going on in that area of where that whole street or that whole area back in the 60s. Is that accurate?
No, the fact is there was drugs everywhere. I mean, people were smoking marijuana.
1969.
And you got to remember in that, and I was alive then, so I remember vividly, that was commonplace. And the idea that they're looking for excuses behind assessing responsibility on the actions of the perpetrators and so forth are all the people in the cottage industry that believe in these conspiratorial theories behind the murders.
Well, I've heard it as in, because, you always hear where the helter-skelter theory that supposedly the reason for killing these people was,
a drug deal gone bad.
Whatever. Versus a drug deal gone bad, that was the real motivational thing force on these killings versus, that they wrote the thing with a pig and all that other stuff, that was more like on purpose versus what was really motivating the murders. What do you think?
I know that everybody wants to rechange the story because no one can accept the facts. There's always got to be something that, it's the same thing with the Titanic. Well, did you know the Titanic sister ship had these problems? And that's why that ship wasn't the Titanic. They painted the Titanic label on this other sister ship.
Yeah.
It's like, cut the crap. Keep it simple, stupid, kids. Let's just cut to the crap.
What is it? Akram's razor. The simplest is usually what it is.
Because that's the whole problem. Because to facilitate a conspiracy, and this is the problem, and I love to shoot out of the sky these conspiratorial theories. To have a conspiracy means you have to have more than one person involved. And in these stories, there's multiple levels of their depths, of their sincere lunacy.
Well, what? I sometimes I think, that what do you think? Do you really think then the motivation behind it was that they were all just kind of like products of their lifestyles and the drugs they were doing and Charlie Manson?
You mean the motivation for the kids to do the murders? Or
Yeah. To go in there and murder these people that.
All right. This is the scoop about that. And having been a young kid at the time, the murders took place not too far away, and having friends and having a sister who's 8 years older, and having friends of mine who had brothers and sisters that were older than them, and having seen firsthand, not looking back from 2023 back to then and going, gee, I wonder if today's approach to things applies to it. It's like, let's get this straight, kids. It was a different time. And this isn't just some cockeyed statement from a guy that's an old guy telling you about this. This is the truth. It wasn't the same. We had no internet. There was no fear. But prior to the murders, hitchhikers were the way to travel around.
I remember that hitchhiking was a big thing back then.
Now there were lots of things that there was a sense of innocence. You guys don't understand that because you can't. You were raised in a generation where fear was the prominent aspect of viewing your experience. In the 60s, you got to remember, there wasn't this fear of somebody was going to come and shoot you in the middle of the night at your home when you were asleep. There was no things as home invasion robberies.
Right.
There weren't. There wasn't the everyday mass shooting at the movie theater,
period,
at the local market, at the shopping mall. These things didn't exist.
You're right.
So you got to put yourself back in a state of mind which people cannot disengage themselves from what they presently experience with this set of eyes, which they're looking out at the world today versus then. It was different. So my point is that the kids, there was something called the generation gap. Yes, this we don't even speak about now. You want to know why? Because the generation that grew out of the 60s said, we're not going to do the shit that our parents did to us. So when these kids became parents, they didn't do the torturous behaviors that their parents had done to them. And what I'm talking about is that the parents of the kids that went off to join Charlie Manson were, let's just say they weren't off-kilter kids. They were from very good background homes. They weren't from broken homes. There wasn't a high divorce rate.
Right.
But the parents went through World War II.
Yes.
And their feelings about things was very adherent to a very strict protocol of discipline, respect.
Yes.
No drinking at under 21 type of thing, because that's how they were. They weren't doing what their parents did to them. There wasn't any tolerance of marijuana use.
Oh God, yes.
Forget other drugs. Just start off with marijuana. Where we are today, it's totally copacetic and legal. In those days, it was you got picked up by a policeman in those days. You went to jail because you had a joint.
Let me tell you, what was it that I think they put out a booklet that was called Reefer Madness or something like that.
Right. Reefer Madness was a movie of the 1930s by.
Okay, it was it was a movie. It was something like
bullshit. But yeah, people were terrified. The demon weed and this and that. It's like there was no demon. It was all hyperbolic bullshit. Yes, about it. So the kids, and I remember my friend. I was like 6 years old in 1969. And my friend's brother, who was maybe about 4 years older than us, maybe 5 years older, I remember being at his house once, and it was like 5 o'clock, and you watched that TV show Mad Men. And when I watched that show, I was like going, God, they really got it right on the knuckles. They literally took that ruler and smacked the crack across your knuckles and, ow, that hurts. Because it's true. The father got home. I was there at his house. I remember one day in the midweek, and I was hanging out there. It was like 5:30. His father came home, went into the den, sat there at the bar, and made himself a gosh. I heard clink, clink, clink of a couple of ice cubes going into a little short glass, and a book and then the wife came in and said, "Well, honey, how was your day?" Blah blah. Just like in Mad Men.
Yeah.
And then she said, "Oh yeah, I've got some bad, something I don't want to really, bother you with, but Jeffrey's brother, I forgot his name. He goes, Todd had a little problem today at school, and he's had to see the principal. But father takes the slug. I went in and watched it. Father takes the slug of the drink, slams it down on the gosh darn counter." Marches his ass into the kid's bedroom. I hear the slam of the door going shut. And then I hear, "Dad, did it?" And then it's like bubbling, arguing. And then it's like, I hear something to the effect of, "No, Dad, no." Then bam, bam, bam. And what I'm talking about, bam, 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 was a leather gosh darn belt.
Yes.
From his father's gosh darn waist that was wrapped and thrashed against the kid's back and ass. And then the father comes out. I see the dad come out of the gosh darn kid's bedroom 10 minutes later, and he's putting his belt on. So I saw that much.
So yeah, you knew what was used.
And this was par for the course. There is no state of mind of.
There was it. Don't you remember that saying, "Wait until your father gets home"?
Oh yeah, this is what this generation and the generation preceding it don't really get in their head what it was like. They have no reference point. So when they read the stuff that they read in the conspiratorial handbooks about the murders, I go, "My ass, you have no idea what you're talking about. You were born long after the murders took place, and you're using your context of your vision of what you went through, which has no relevance to what these kids went through and how they were treated." And
let me ask you something. Do you think, because everybody knows that Charlie Manson had a bad, his whole life from the cradle was bad. Let's go there. Okay. Do you think that these people that were hung out with him, they were young, like you said, they weren't really bad compared to Charlie Manson? How's that? Do you think it was a question of mind manipulation, the drugs? What do you think that this is how he got them to go so far? How's that? Because some people will go along for the ride until you start talking about, "I want you to kill somebody." Then it'd be like, whoa. All
right, let's finish what we just laid down the foundation of, because that's what we're talking about, because it plays into exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. These
kids experience the same kind of rudimentary, stringent, hard ass, ball busting indoctrination of their parents asserting their parental rights on their children, being the reprimanding, the discipline. That was part of the framework of that era. My parents didn't do that as much. I mean, I didn't ever get a belt to my ass or stuff. I got spanked, sure. Corporal punishment. That's what it was then. So, these kids were getting broken down by their parents.
I remember in school, when I went to school, it was corporal punishment in elementary school. Put out your hand and they would whack you on the palm of your hand with a ruler.
I believe you me, I got slapped by my teacher once, and I remember in 5th grade I said there is a Loch Ness, and there is a Loch Ness. And she goes, "There is no such thing as Loch Ness. How dare you sass me?" And swack! I told my mother. She goes, "What? She slapped you?" Well, that was it. Yeah. There wasn't this idea that, the kids. So the kids basically started to fracture from their own home environments.
Okay.
There was, and again, this is why in the 60s, there was a huge amount of teenage runaways. Mm-hmm. There was the burgeoning explosion of the communes.
Right. Yes.
Because again, it feeds into what I said earlier about the generation gap. The generation that was the parents to these kids that were adolescents in the 60s that were born in the in the mid 50s. Let's see, they would have been about the early 50s, just after 5 years after World War II. There was an immense amount of discipline in the home structures of these kids and these home lives. Yep. So again, that's what they were running away from. That's why you have this burgeoning explosion of the communes, because the kids wanted to basically not listen to the parents, and because they knew that pot wasn't making them stupid, as the fear factors was being promoted in and through the media that was trying to demonize it. And again, Richard Nixon fed into that whole thing and played up on what you said with the reefer madness, because he was waging a political war against the youth movement.
There was a lot
Why?
of stuff going on in the background.
Because the youth movement was not in support of his ideology.
No, there was a lot of stuff that was going on. But again, I'm going to ask you.
So
I can understand all of that, but there's a point where, let's say hey man, I'm done with following rules and I want to live my life. And
all right. So I'll get to you. I'll answer your question that you're going at. So Marlene, what the kids would do is they were looking for a commune, or they were looking runaways looking for a home base.
Sure.
Some of them obviously were up in Haight-Ashbury, up where Manson was, and fell into he saw the opportunity of what it was. Now, remember again, you got to remember this. It didn't start out as a murderous cult. That doesn't exist till very, 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 very later down the line. So you can't, again, this is what's important. It's about establishing a foundation. You don't build a house just here it is. You have to establish a foundation, and layer by layer by layer by layer by layer, you establish a certain amount of credibility and a sense of home life and a sense of security. Mm-hmm. So again, he was basically making his own commune. And what happened is that he wanted to be a musician. And he was an aspiring artist. So long before any of this stuff in August 8th, 1969, he was trying to get along, and he found his way through his girls into the lap of one Dennis Wilson or Brian Wilson. Brian or Dennis, one of the two of them. I keep on getting them mixed up. And the girls ended up moving into his house. And then they brought Manson in to meet him. And he ended up really enjoying him and found him to be interesting. And remember, this is the beginning. This isn't the end, working backwards. See, people do this. Oh, he did all these terrible things. How could these people hang out with him after the? And he goes, hindsight is 2020. We all know this now. At the time, before any of this was existing, there's a whole lead up to that place. Nothing happens in a vacuum.
Nobody there thought at that time this guy and these girls are going to end up being involved in a mass murder kind of situation.
Nobody's going to know that. Exactly. And the trigger, and we were talking really about the item that triggers this whole, as I see it, is what I'm leading up to. You're going to go, holy crap. It's like, yeah, because had one thing not happened, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't be talking about this anniversary coming up in a week.
Why do you think, what is it? What's that trigger?
So here's what's happened. So Manson ends up meeting Brian Wilson or Dennis. I think it was Brian, Dennis, one of the two of them. And he ends up becoming friends with him. He's with the Beach Boys, and he introduces him, takes him around to all the people, to all these parties.
Yeah.
And nobody thinks twice of him. He's not a pariah yet. He's not a murderer yet. He's just some strange quizzical character, which again is par for the course of that era.
Sure.
There were many curiosity people. Not Timothy Leary, Tiny Tim.
God, I remember. That's right, boy. That's a weird boy.
What a crazy sort of
tiptoe through the tulips kind of deal.
And people, what the? It's like you don't know unless you know, and this is par for the course. So again, he ends up goes to Mama Cass's house to a party with Brian or Dennis Wilson, and basically has a confrontation with Mama Cass.
Oh, he does.
Manson does. And famously, Mama Cass sees right through his stuff and says, get the flying flag, you're out of here, goodbye, boom.
Okay.
What happens is Brian Wilson is in fact, or Brian or Dennis, I keep on getting the two mixed up, I'm sorry. We'll just say Mr. Wilson, pardon the joke to Dennis the Menace, but Mr. Wilson ends up liking some of these lyrics that Manson has put down in paper as songs and puts in the head of Charlie Manson and says to him, goes, maybe we'll make a record or use some of these lyrics and we'll make a song of this music. You know,
keyword being maybe.
Pardon?
Keyword being maybe.
You know, he said, well, I don't know. Again, this is what I'm saying. And I don't know if he promised him, but I want to hedge
for somebody
on the side
that's
that he said
hopeful,
that
think about it. That's like,
he goes, I like some of these things. He showed them to his manager, who is living at the end of the driveway from where I live, which is Terry Melcher. And he goes to the house at the end of 10,050 Cielo Drive, where later on will become Sharon Tate's house. Now, Terry is living there with Candace Berg and his girlfriend. And I know this is getting long in the tooth, but if we're going to do it,
keep going. This is very interesting.
So Terry's like looks at the lyrics and stuff and says, "This is crap," and tells it to Manson's face. That this is garbage. Dennis doesn't care. Dennis is still like, "No, I still think we can do something with this." Screw him. But Terry is not very impressed, as Terry later on said after the incident, after the murders. And so Manson knows where the house is. Manson knows who's living there. And Manson knows the connection of that individual back to Mr. Wilson. Fast forward to 1968, Dennis creates and produces, or Brian Wilson, isn't it? I can't do. I can look it up on Google, but it's not important. He ends up producing one of the quintessential albums of the 60s. Now, I kind of liken it to what Phil Spector did when he produced his first albums and created this thing called the Wall of Sound. That became, as it was the talk of the town. It was huge in the early 60s, and everybody and their mother in the music industry that was an artist ran to him at the time, Phil Spector, to have them produce their music, because they were so taken by this Wall of Sound in creation that he manufactured. In the same regard, when Pet Sounds, the Beach Boys album, came out, it was like the second coming of the Wall of Sound, in the sense that everybody was jumping on the bandwagon to get him to produce their album, because the success of Pet Sounds for the Beach Boys, he could do no harm.
The magic touch.
Magic touch, exactly. So they felt, so what happens? He becomes inundated with applications to produce albums. Manson, meantime, is getting a little squirrely, going, Brian, Mr. Wilson, I want to get this gosh an album. Let's get the album. Come on. And becomes impatient. And to the point where he can't just sit and ride the wave, as is told. You have to sometimes just sit back and let everything ride its course until you'll have your chance. So sit tight and just bide your time. That was not the case for Charlie. Charlie Manson decided to get impatient, unruly, unsettled, and started pushing. Now, what happens when you push? You become aggressive. What happens when you become aggressive? You lose your focus. And what happens when you become aggressive and you lose your focus? You tend to lash out at people in a way that is less than worthy of their time. And you start to burn your bridges.
You get kicked out.
And what happened is that he overstayed his welcome at the residence of Wilson's residence on Sunset Boulevard, to the point where Mr. Wilson moved out of the house and let the Mansons there. He basically didn't pay the utilities, didn't pay the rent, and the place got foreclosed upon, and they evicted Manson. Manson started to bother Mr. Wilson at his recording studio, barging in the middle of recording sessions, to the point where he said, I can't help you. I can't work on your thing anymore. I've told you time and time again.
He became a stalker.
He became a stalker, which there wasn't such a thing back in the day.
But yeah.
He became unruly, and Mr. Wilson said, look, I quit. Get the hell out of here. Leave me the F alone. At which point, we know this was sometime in late 68, early 69, because Charlie decides to go to the house at the end of the street as a last resort, trying to reach out to Mr. Melcher to have Terry get in touch with with Dennis, whoever the Wilson was, Mr. Wilson, and reconnect them. But he goes to the house in February of 69, or is it February? In March of 69, it's too late, because he and Terry Melcher and Candice Bergen have broken up and have moved out of the residence and vacated the premises. And Sharon and Roman have now moved in because it's a rental property that Terry and Candice were renting. They no longer rent it. Sharon decided she loved that house so much and was so fond of the wishing well, she wanted to rent it herself. So her and Roman Polanski, who were newly married, ended up moving in. And that's when Manson comes there looking for Terry Melcher, and Terry's no longer there, is told by the photographer taking photos of Sharon in the backyard. And then Sharon ends up coming around the corner and telling that the same to Manson. And he now finds out that Terry's moved out. So again, had Charlie just sat peacefully and quietly and just waited to ride the wave, and Dennis and Mr. Wilson's producing credits had tapered down and his interest and the demand of his had reached a normal level, he would have then have been able to have facilitated his dream of making music with, Dennis Wilson, right, Mr. Wilson, and who knows, the Beach Boys, whatever. But because, and I say it again, because he couldn't sit tight.
Well, I think he circulated in those circles and he said, I want this for myself. And then there's one chance just blew away.
Well, it blew away, but remember, cause and effect.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's just that
he caused the effect that blew it away. Because
of course. But he saw it.
Wait, it would have been fine. Right. But because he couldn't, and he was so impatient, the famous hit list that Manson had of all those 50s actors and whatnot, I got news for you. At the time, none of those people would want to admit that they had any interaction with Manson. But I personally, in fact, believe that every single person on that list was a person that Charles Manson either made physical contact with at a party or at a club or someplace and met, and they rebuffed him. And that's what the list was. It wasn't that he was just targeting randomly. He was like, no. These people he had crossed paths with.
Somewhere along the line, something went.
And they didn't feel that they didn't see what Mr. Wilson had seen in him. And basically he felt like, these are little shitheels that are also adding to those, to making me not succeed. And he blamed them instead of blaming himself for what was unfolding in front of him.
Right, because let's face it, look at that lifestyle. He's thinking, man, to have enough money where you could sit around and talk and do drugs and go to parties and not worry about anything. He's thinking, that's what I want. Like you said, he wanted it yesterday.
I don't necessarily know I don't think necessarily he was as much interested in the pit pratfalls. He wanted to be deep in his heart of hearts. He wanted to be a musician.
Well, that was also the means to the end. He saw that once you made it in, let's say, in the music industry, that was it.
I don't see it, but I don't see. I see. I think what we're applying now is present day. Because here's the thing, and this is another strike at the people who don't understand. Musicians in those days didn't get paid bupkis. Seriously, even with inflation, if you apply things, A-list musicians to then, there's still the hugest disparity.
Well, you know why I say that? And maybe it's because you always think of musicians. It's not only that they're musicians, but the lifestyle they lead. It's like one of those things that being a musician, you get,
Yes and no. I don't think the trappings of what you're talking about, he had already without all that. See, he doesn't think wait, women and drugs. He had women, he had drugs. He didn't have see, that's what I'm saying to you. When you start looking backwards again.
But you know what? People like that, see, he's like you said, he's circulating, but he's like being invited or because he's going with somebody else, And I think people like that at the end, they want to be the place where everybody wants to come to him. You know what I'm saying? Hey, we want to go to Charlie's place.
But it's not, a lot of musicians and people did that. Like Led Zeppelin, we know, was famous for in the 70s for having the barrage of, what do you call them? God, what do you call them again? I forgot what you call them again. Gosh.
Entourage, groupies.
Groupies, thank you. He had that. He had, see, Manson wasn't really into, and again, he didn't mind eating garbage and stuff. He looked at them and he had contempt for them. Those people. That's what I'm saying
So
to you.
what do you think it was? It was his personality at that point was like you said, that it didn't have to be it could be something slight, and it was like, I'm going to remember what you just said or did.
Right. I think it was this. He suffered from the spurned lover syndrome.
Okay.
That he was never, it was not about the monetary. It was about the respect, about acknowledging that he was valued. And I think that he wanted, seriously, he wanted to be acknowledged as a creative person. He didn't want to do, the murders, I think, like I said, were a cause, an afterthought of his rage and just despondency of being let down and not having the fulfillment of his dreams. He felt like the rug was pulled. They just said the rug was pulled out from under him, and he felt like, I'm going to get you all. I'm going to get you all, blah, blah. And that's what it really came down to, that he just felt betrayed. And the betrayal was so deep that we, again, when you're talking about psychological profiling, it's like, wait a second, but you got to go back to that era. And like I said, when you look at all the things, you go, he really was an odd, strange bird. And as I said, had that not happened, had he fulfilled that aspect, we wouldn't be talking about Sharon Tate.
So do you think then that it was that it was his fault that he didn't get the message, in other words, and basically he got booted off, like, get out of here. And that was the trigger for everything that came afterwards?
I have to stop you right there because I literally turned down the volume on the speakers because I was hearing this low frequency bum 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 bum
really?
Bum bum bum, and I was going. That's why I was like this. Going, what the hell is that sound I'm hearing?
Well, you know what, and this is that's interesting because here we are, a week away.
A week less than.
Let me ask you: is in all these years that you've been there, do you see more activity around the time of the anniversary?
Before, never the day of, never the day after, and after.
Okay.
Oh yeah. And I mean, today is what, the 3rd. This falls right in line with this is when stuff starts to amp up. And I always say to people, well, what are you thinking that the anniversary is so special to you? I said, why? Think of it in their terms. It's the day they died. That's not a celebratory event.
Sure. But and this is the thing that sometimes I think that, obviously, besides the obvious, which is nobody, they were killed, they were murdered, all these victims. It's that none of them, how can I say, I think that never in their wildest, how's this? Sometimes people do dangerous stuff, like go in submersibles 13,000 feet. So when they die, it's like, are you really surprised? You know what I'm saying? Or they go mountain climbing to Everest, and a glacier or an avalanche buries your body. It doesn't get found for 30 years. So, okay, what did you expect? But I think these people, the lifestyle they were leading and the place where they were at, which is their home, this nice neighborhood, none of them expected in their plans, not only that they were going to die, but the way they were going to die. All right.
Yeah, I'll give you that 1,000%, because you got to remember, before that incident, what do you got to look at to, use as a barometer or something to measure it against? There wasn't. There were homicides, in double homicide, suicides, where the husband or wife would kill the other spouse and then would kill themselves, but nothing on the world stage. That's why I try to say, since that time, since 54 years has passed, we've had, let's see, Jim Jones in Guyana. We've had Idi Amin and in Uganda and the slaughters there. We've had 9/11. We've had countless school shootings. I mean, I hate to say the fact that we're kind of numb to this type of
unfortunately,
situation.
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes. But again, back then, there's no reference point.
No, it was.
And
which is why I think also this crime captivated the country the way it did.
Oh.
Because everybody was like, what? The idea of the hippie was like, hey, flower children and all that stuff. And all of a sudden the flower children like hacked up people or killed them and knifed them. And this is not what people were expecting.
Well, remember, the murders took place in August, on the beginning of August, first week of August.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knew anything of who the heck.
Right. They were walking around. Nobody knew it was them.
Nobody knew who it was. They didn't know if it was the Black Panthers. They didn't know if it was religious Satanists. If it was, no one knew who it was. They didn't have any idea who the perpetrators of this terrible crime were. It was so far off the radar and beyond the scope of what had been taking place. It was groundbreaking in the sense that what did we have to go on that was similar to this before that? Nothing. So
right.
So remember, not until 3 months later, literally, let's say August 7th to September 7th, October 7th, November 7th. So practically for 4 months, it was all
right.
limbo. However, the fear was set into the minds of the public that something had happened so brutal, with such brutality, and an 8.5-month pregnant woman was killed in such a way that everything was like upside down and right side up was done. Everything was just switched. So
well, that's what I was saying back then. If you were in a bad, if things happened to you and you had a risky lifestyle, it's like, hey, you brought it on yourself. But like what you said, these people are living, they're inside their home in an upscale neighborhood and they're slaughtered. And I think that's what wigged everybody else out. Like, what?
And she was 8.5 months pregnant. Like I said, my mom ceased to give hitchhikers rides. People started locking their doors. People started getting guns and security systems and patrols. It was just everything. I mean, the innocence, and people don't understand it because they weren't privy to it. And I remember vividly, it was like a light switch being flipped off and everything just changed. It was like that.
Right.
And that's what these people that write these books, including the man that wrote this book, Chaos, and I only know one excerpt where he claims that it's all a lie and that the first person to die wasn't Stephen Parent. He was the last person to die. And I sat there and I said, I don't know who this idiot is, but anybody who claims to say that the murderers, all of them that were there, their testimony is bullshit. Is a question mark of saying, well, and who the heck do you think you are to challenge the statements of the murderers in their own testimony of how the sequence of events was? And you're doubting them, sitting in your home and at your computer some 40 some odd years after the fact, and you're trying to change the story because there was a paint chip on the kid's bumper, and that doesn't make sense how there could be a paint chip on the bumper. And I listened to his excuse for how this all made sense. And I said, everything you said could have happened in the same turn of events as the murderers said, as the witness who was in the back guest house said.
Yeah, so I know that they've also, do you think that Charlie or any of the people he was with, because I know that there was a couple of cold cases of girls, young teenagers that were killed, that they were always looking at, was this a victim of Charlie Manson? Do you think he ever killed other people that were not on his list?
Oh, before the murders, I mean,
right, yeah, around that time period that they said that him and his girls and his family were out there.
You can look and cast the stone at being Manson being the one
right
that is responsible because of their similarities. But I'll be honest with you, there were very much publicized serial killers of the time that would pick up hitchhikers and kill young girls. So the idea that we're saying this is all, you think that, I personally believe that a lot of those ones that are missing persons is what you're talking about, not necessarily.
Well, there's been others that I think there was one that they identified her like maybe 3 or 4 years ago because DNA turned out she was a girl from Canada, but she had been like around that time, 68, 69. She had been killed by multiple stab wounds, and she had been like a Jane Doe for all these years.
Here's the thing. Again, there's similarities, but I tend to say, something, it's easy to attribute that to Manson. The problem is there were other people out there that were just, serial killers that were doing this and picking up hitchhikers again, because the prevalence of hitchhiking in that era, it was the way and means by which people got around. There was no Uber, there was no Lyft. Kids didn't have, so they didn't have money. So there were lots of hitchhikers. So I mean, the opportunity for somebody to randomly kill somebody like that is very, very
right.
possible.
I mean, later on there was a Hillside Strangler and stuff like that. And I know the hitchhiking thing made it easy.
Exactly. And that's why I said in 69, 68, 69, before the murders took place, you got to remember that a random murder, it doesn't have to be a serial murder. It could have been a rapist. Yeah. A guy who picked up a hitchhiker, raped her, and she struggled, and he started stabbing. He lost his, that's what I'm saying to you. Yeah, there's similarities to the LaBianca thing, but remember, the LaBianca murder and the Tate murders were done with a specific intent. What you're talking about is a Jane Doe that was not ever found till
right. And that's my question is like, and I know what you're saying. Like, okay, now we're going to hang every cold case.
Yeah,
on Manson.
Hanging on Manson's hanger or coat hook is fine.
Right.
However, there are a lot of things that I keep on hearing saying, yeah, that's easy. It's easy to do because you got to remember, the police departments do not want to have unsolved cases.
Oh no, this makes them look bad.
Exactly. So the fact is when you can get them out of the way and say that's that person, great and dandy, it's off the docket. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't an individual that committed maybe 2 murders and there were rapes involved. And, again, the bodies were hidden. The exact opposite of the effectiveness of what Manson was about. Because remember, before the Tate murders, the Gary Hinman murder took place. They didn't take Gary's body and take it out into the gosh darn and put it into a grave. They left him at home at his own house to be found there, which again goes back to modus operandi, which is Manson didn't hide bodies. The only one person's body we know that he hid was perpetrated after the murders were discovered in 1969 and before he went to jail. And that I'm speaking of is Shorty Shea, the ranch hand at Spawn Ranch, who he believed had turned state's evidence and basically gave the drop on Manson for the car stealing, for the car thieving that he was perpetrating, having nothing to do with the Tate murders at all.
Right.
But he didn't find his body till 90 something. And again, so that's the one exception. But for the most part, he was about making a statement that conveyed a powerful message. So hiding a body would not have been a part of his.
Nobody gets the message. What's the use?
Exactly. And 50 years later, they found the body and it's like, well, that's great. That doesn't help him. He's now dead.
Sure.
He was all about sensationalism and taking advantage of making a statement.
When do you think that when he told them to do it versus he was always hedging his bets, thinking if this ever comes undone, since I didn't do it and I got somebody else to do it?
Plausible deniability. Right, now, back to the girls. Now back to the girls, because I want to get back to that, what we were talking about specifically. So again, they were living with Manson, and Manson was giving them a safe harbor.
Right.
And by that, I mean, he gave them what they most craved, which was stability, whether we like it or not. Whether 54 years later, we want to look back, that's stability.
Sure. I mean,
it was
structure,
a sense of
kind of.
Security, love, family. Right. Those are the 4 components and the 4 points at which rests everything else. Once you've given that to somebody that hasn't had that and felt that they were left in the cold for so long and been betrayed by the family that they were raised by, it's reestablishing a new network of family. Now, you're gonna love this because this is gonna go, oh my God. Do you remember in the 70s, something called EST? EST, it was called EST. LifeSpring was another one that came out in the late 70s. These were, God, how do you explain this? They were psychological, for lack of better words, they were cults.
Okay.
And these cults, and the EST was the first one I remember hearing about in the early 70s. Somebody told me about it. And basically what it did was it broke you down. And what I mean by broke you down, it mentally took you as a human being.
And that's what you have to do.
Tore down the layers of you and getting you down to the essence of you, so that all the stuff that you've been taught about yourself and your life has been ripped, and then it's reestablished. And I mean, I heard some of the things in the methods.
Wipe the slate clean. That's what they're doing.
It was, and again, this goes back. This is years after Manson. but they would tear you down and they would rebuild you. I mean, tear you down by people would sit there in a room, one person would sit in a room and a bunch of people around you would basically criticize you and browbeat you and tear you apart and make you look at yourself naked and mentally naked, not physically.
Sure, right, exactly. Yeah.
It was basically removing you from you.
Sure.
And reprogramming you, not in the way that you do a computer, but helping build up your self-esteem, again, your self-identity. And this is stuff that was practiced by Manson. And he learned all this stuff through his years of being incarcerated because he became what he was, a sociopath.
Yeah.
And the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath is sociopath plays the marionette, plays the puppeteer with the strings to the marionette, makes the marionette dance around.
Exactly.
The psychopath not only believes that, but does it himself because he can't believe that he can get somebody else to do what he wants to do properly. Not that he can't make somebody else do it.
It's all about control for the psychopath, especially.
The sociopath is about control. The psychopath is the one that says, I can't trust somebody to do this right, and has a fear that they won't be it followed to the T, so they're so anal retentive, they do it themselves. Manson utilized the dynamics of the commune scenario.
Okay.
And had these kids indoctrinated in this commune and then had broken down their mental senses. As I just watched an 1.5 hour long special from 1973, where they interviewed the people, the girls that were not in jail, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, a bunch of them, and the guys. And they laid it out as straight as it can be laid out. People these days don't understand it because it's true. And it's simple, and it's what was done, and that's the truth. They go into talking about how one guy was talking about how Manson made the guys sleep with that took their sexuality and just destroyed it. He made the girls sleep with other girls and do everything possible between the two girls, and the guys do the same thing so that there were no boundaries.
Right.
And he basically gave them a sense of his identity through them.
Right.
And it wasn't that they were under any drugs, because as I know, I don't know of any drug that the CIA was able to manifest and utilize to get the results that supposedly these people think Manson was able to perpetrate. And I go, if the CIA couldn't do it, Charlie Manson couldn't do it, and Charlie Manson wasn't an agent of the CIA.
Well, usually when you have a group of people, that's what I'm saying. It all depends, like what you said, maybe what's in their background, mentally, behavior problems. When you start getting into that control, the ones that have none of that split, they leave.
Right.
And the ones that are left behind are the ones that's like the person that's like the marionette. He's the puppet master. He's already, okay, this one, get out of here. I don't want you here. You're not going to go with the program. Get out of here. Right. You're going to ruin my party.
Right. If you don't have everybody going in the same direction, one off, you get rid of him because he's the weakest link in the chain. So again, if you have a group of followers, and again, by the time this commission of this murders were going on in a week from now, 54 years ago, they had already been in a lot of cases, a lot of the people were in that environment for 2 years plus.
Yeah.
So when you start to look at it from what the reality is versus the speculative and the conspiratorial, you start to go, okay, now I have a better understanding of how he was able to do what he was able to do. And then you go, but you're not them. You wouldn't be part of the group that was still in the group with the rest of those followers because you were the alpha, so you were removed. These are all the betas.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He would have gotten people like that is like, I chase him off because you're not going to do what I tell you. Plus you're going to ruin the ones that I got now.
Well, and remember, there were people like Diane Lake and a few other people that were still in the family that did not want anything to do with the murders.
Right.
And left shortly thereafter. And then they had a mark on their head and they tried to kill some of these people.
Sure.
Because they knew the inside goods. It's like the reason why, I don't even want to go into this, but I'm going to touch upon this.
Do it. Go.
People that leave Scientology
Oh boy, there we go, man. You must have been reading my mind.
Of course I am. What did you expect? Are targets for the same type of thing. If you know the inside scoop, and you know the gosh darn text, and you have the gosh darn, the codex to answer the questions of why this and what this and this means, you are a threat unto that institution that exists.
Yes. Let me tell you something. I think, oh my God, the special that they ran, what was it? It's got to be like 3 or 4 years ago. That, oh my God, what's the actress's name? The one that
Leah Remini.
Yeah, Remini or whatever.
Remini, right? Yes.
Everybody knew about Scientology, but man, when she exposed what they do to people that try to get out, I was like, holy crap!
You don't think she's got a target on her head as big as the state of Texas?
But I mean, when you look at that, it's like, people talk about that when they try to leave, they would have people watching them and following them.
That's right.
And I think as normies, we're looking at this and they're going, huh?
And now there's a huge ad campaign on television about, you should watch Scientology. You're curious. And I'm like, my ass, I don't need to watch, see, or hear. I know you're a freaking lunatic asylum.
Let me tell you something. I remember seeing that special. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? It was like right there under their nose. And I mean, these people are, they're scary. And what was it? There's what was it? Shelley McCavage, Miscavige or something like that nobody's seen her for years. She's never been produced. And, of course, the inference is that she's not among the living. She's pushing up daisies somewhere.
Well, that or the fact that they took care of her as they blacklisted her because there's lots of powerful people that are in Scientology that have influenced 6 degrees separation from Tom Cruise. Hello?
Yes.
So, I mean...
And that's another thing, that when you look at who the membership is, there's a lot of nobodies at the beginning or down at the lower levels. But then you hear about other people like, man, especially after what you hear, it's like, you're into Scientology? What? What's wrong with
you? We can't spend too much time because we're just...
No, I know. Well, that's a whole nother show. But I know what you mean as far as as far as mind control is concerned and how you get people to do things that they themselves later on might say, how did I do that? Or they recognize something in their personality or their background, which is like, you're the perfect participant for this.
Exactly. And so that's the whole situation of why the mystery becomes less mysterious when you look at everything upon everything as it leads up to the murders. And then you go, drugs couldn't do that. It's like, no kidding. And then everybody has to come back to square one, which is the facts. No one likes to hear them because we can't accept the facts from our vantage point, present day. Looking back then, we apply present day methodology and understanding and all that we know and all that we have at our fingertips with the computers and the internet, not understanding that none of that existed then.
I mean, something. I really think this is my limited knowledge of psychology. I think a lot of Charlie Manson's, when you are rejected in the womb because his mom was a prostitute and basically you're rejected by your mom, you have a problem with rejection the rest of your life. As far as your responses are out of proportion. Nobody likes to be rejected. Let's face it.
Right.
Human conditions. Nobody likes to be rejected. But when you have that from babies basically being born, your response to it is out of proportion to other people that maybe didn't have that experience. As in what you were explaining, that maybe when he was there and he saw it as a rejection, and maybe they were dismissive, but not to them, it wasn't a big deal.
Exactly.
He saw it as like, Anna, I'm going to remember this.
Yep.
And I'm going to have the last word on it.
Well, of course, to him, it's more significant. And again, this also has to do with their place in society. These people in his mind, these people are the establishment.
Yeah.
He is not. So it's like to them, it's like, well, it's just another, to them, it's just another fan, just another crackpot.
Sure.
To him, it's like, well, another establishment individual giving me the brush off. All right, fine. And as you said, he takes it to heart times 10.
Oh yeah.
And to them, it's like, it's just another, they don't remember him because what's to remember?
Sure.
To him, it's, you just carved an X in my heart with your name next to it. Remember that.
I'm going to remember your, on the date and time.
Right. By the way, something that totally was lost to me in the conversation was, we're in the middle of the gosh darn Vietnam War.
That's another
in
thing,
1968. Started in 64, but by 68 it was full blown. There was a draft. Again, you got that aspect on top of the reason why Manson is able to do what he's doing.
Yeah.
And get these kids, because you've got that fervent youth movement that's not wanting to go to war. Meantime, the generation ahead of it paid its life dearly in World War II and doesn't see an issue with it. So again, you're talking about more friction between the two generations hitting each other. That's another aspect that, I'm acting like a present day.
Your World War II, it was like, it was patriotic and you were going to go off to war wherever it was, if it was in the, in Europe or in the Pacific, whatever it was like.
Different, right? You had a sense of it, but this war didn't seem like a war that was
no. It wasn't. Far from it.
So that's as well. So like I said, so Manson had his things, did his things. So when Manson finally got to the point where he couldn't get Terry Melcher to connect him back to Mr. Wilson or Dennis or Brian, it started to work on him, and it started to irritate him, and it started to grind inside of him. So finally, he basically broke, and the straw that broke the camel's back was basically his unhappiness and his miserableness. And that's when he decided to basically go kill Sharon Tate and wreak revenge, as I said, on them. And then the aspect of Helter Skelter, I still believe that's 100% true, that because when you watch this, go on YouTube and look it up. I should get you the link, and I'll send you the link to look at it at.
Okay.
You're listening to the kids, the actual, not actors, but they're real family members, the others that were not incarcerated, talking about Charlie's, in his vision, about going to the desert and doing trainings with guns and rifle, preparing for Helter Skelter and this big Armageddon. He believed in that.
Okay.
He really did. And like I said, what's really scary is when you watch this interview, the guy was a reporter. He basically embedded himself and lived at the ranch for 6 months, Spawn Ranch, where they were still living in 1971, 72, and basically recorded their interviews in their own environment. You watch this and you go, okay, these people cannot be coerced to do anything they don't want to do. They're not reading off the cue cards. You can see that these people aren't acting. There's no reason. So when people are acting, it's like they were being coerced. It's like they're speaking in their own mind and their own tongue and speaking honestly and openly about all the stuff that was going on there at the ranch. And they're not lying. And as soon as you start to look and watch this and go, this is like a world apart from where I am sitting today. It's like they were a world apart from where they were sitting then. But it's easy to understand when you look at society at that time and at the period of time, and not look through it present through 2023 glasses, but look through it through 1968, 69 glasses. You go, wow.
The mentality. Yeah, what we think is like, are you kidding me? But yeah, back then the mentality was different. It was totally, it's incredible. Yeah. Society, culture has changed tremendously. And I mean, that's an understatement. And as far as whether we become more cynical, or I don't know what you want to call it, but
yeah, we have. Of course we have. We've lost all sense of empathy. We have turned 180 degrees from 1968 to 2023.
Yes.
Forget it. Empathy. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. You wouldn't have a Donald Trump in 1968.
No, let me tell you something.
You couldn't have that kind of.
I want to say, you know what?
It just didn't.
We had
life.
We had and you're absolutely right. Back then, there was and I'm going to say overall, collectively, there was an innocence about. Overall, yeah, of course there were there's always been deviants. Hello, but they were really on the fringe. Overall, collectively, and I'm going to say Americans.
Yeah,
there was an innocence about what you believed, and what you expected, and that
duty,
that
respect, everything. I mean, in spite of the fact that I remember my mother saying to me as when I turned 12 years old in 75, because the war had not ended, remember, in Vietnam. It didn't come to conclusion. She goes, and she was concerned about the upcoming, there could be another draft in the future. She goes, I want you being a conscientious objector because of what was going on in Vietnam. And a lot of my parents' friends, kids, some of their kids were 18 years old. They got drafted and they were terrified.
Yeah, of course.
And, it wasn't, again, I can't even express the difference. It was devoid of what we know today, of what it was then. It's hard to express. And it's like, God, I don't even want to go into other topics that are running my head.
Let me ask you something, David, because, and this is the thing, that you have a unique perspective because, and as I mentioned, where your house is built at during the time that all this occurred was just land. There was nothing there, right? It was empty.
Empty.
And I know you mentioned in our previous interview that because of the notoriety, what did they do? They got, how long did it take them before they basically raised the place? Like, from what I understand, what they left
her house. You mean
the house, right?
Right, that house. The house down the street sat there till 1994.
Okay.
And they demolished it.
Let me ask you, back then, was there, and I mean, I know it's kind of like difficult because obviously it's a murder house, but was there any type of, back then, any type of stories of hauntings or anybody seeing or hearing stuff around there? Nope.
The last person that lived in the residence was Trent Reznor of 9 Inch Nails. Now, I've heard, here's what's funny. I've heard stories and then I've heard counter stories to that. What I was told was that, well, let's back it up. Rudy Altobelli, the man who owned the property for many, many years, claimed that he moved in right after the murders and lived there without a hitch.
Okay.
Now, I doubt that, and I personally say that I highly doubt that, and that's from my personal experiences. Mind you, I didn't end up going to the residence until 1978, the first time. When I was in high school, my friends wanted to go up there to check out the house, and we'd all read Helter Skelter. So I basically got in a car with one of my friends, and we drove up there. And I remember the first time I went up there, and everything was still like it was time of
originally.
There was a chain link fence. There was a wooden slat fence to the left of that. There was, you saw in the driveway, and then you could just see in the driveway. There was nothing beyond this small rock wall that stood out halfway into the driveway, about 50 feet in. But that was about it. And I remember, and I'll never, the first time and every time subsequent to that I went there, and 78. So let's say the murders were, so 9 years after the murders took place, I was there. And all I remember seeing was lots and lots of Los Angeles Times newspapers slapped up against the chain link fence. And there must have been at least 20, 25 of them. They were weathered. They were yellowed. They had been rain soaked and dried. And they were just sitting there stacked up against the gosh darn gate, the fence gate. And I'm like going, well, somebody's living here. How the hell do you explain all these gosh darn newspapers just piling up?
Right.
The fence, the gate, they're gonna move those goddamn newspapers.
Right. That's how can they get in and out?
So again, that's 9 years after the fact.
Okay.
But supposedly he said he lived there all the time, and then he started renting the house out. And then it was in 92, I think 92 or 93, that Trent Reznor moved in there as a rental.
Right.
Put his recording sound, the mixing board on top of the spot specifically where Sharon's body was.
Jeez.
And I saw the pictures. I said, yeah, that's the spot. And I was like, wow. Oh my God. I heard that he recorded the album Downward Spiral there. And that one of the songs, he had some, again, I heard from sources that Marilyn Manson was also there and recorded an album there. And I heard from secondhand sources that both Marilyn Manson said that it was a freaky joint and that he had weird vibes about the place. I've never spoken to him, nor have I ever spoken to Trent Reznor about it. but that basically, in a nutshell, that both of them had experienced stuff that was unsettling activity in the house that was not normal. I can't attest to whether it's true or not. I just know that that's what I've heard secondhand. And then I've heard other people say, oh, they were there, nothing happened. You know, other people quoting Rudy Altobelli, the owner, saying, oh, he never had any problems with the spirits and this and that. And I'm like, well, if you own it and you want to keep the pristine quality of the property, the last thing you're going to do is make claims that it's paranormally active.
Sure.
That's like a big stop sign to selling a house. And I don't think he gave
back then, especially. It's not like now. Back then, that was like, he didn't want to do that.
So again, I don't personally know what his story was, but I only know what I've heard secondhand. Personally, when we were building this house in 1999 and 2000, I used to go down there to the new owner who was, what's his name? Weintraub. I forgot his first name. Mr. Weintraub bought the property and was trying to build this monstrosity of the house. He approached my father during the construction of this house, and because my father was a contractor, and he was trying to sell that monster to my father. So he walked us through the property from end to end and told us the whole lay of the land and the story. That's how I found out.
And but this was before he brought down the house, or
no,
after the house was demolished?
Was torn down. He had torn down the house. He had built this mega monstrosity of a mansion there. And to me, it was a pink elephant, because I've been around construction sites all my life. And I went through this construction site and I was like going, what the hell gives? I said, you got fireplaces big enough to put a gosh darn VW Beetle in. And I'm like, what the
French chateau style?
Well, I mean, more like gosh darn ancient, like what do you call it, castle style.
Yeah, we're gonna get a boar and we're gonna like.
Yeah, I got the 500-pound boar. We're gonna put it on the spit and we're gonna put it roasted over a gosh darn 2 tons of gosh darn logs. And I kid you not, I go into that fireplace in the lowest floor and I go look up, and I'm looking up, and there are like 2 smokestacks for chimneys going up. I mean, they're 5 foot wide tubes going straight up. And I'm thinking, I've never seen a fireplace where Santa Claus could actually come down without a hitch, because it was that much space. I'm going, this is nuts. So, he took us through. There were alcoves that remind me of the Winchester Mystery House.
Okay.
There was this one little corridor that went around and it went around to nothing. I'm like, hey, Dad. I said, can you tell me what the hell this is meant for? He went around like 10, 15 feet around in a circle, and he came to. I said, I don't get it either. I said, yeah. I said, I don't get this at all, Pops. There's no closet.
So I take it that your dad was we're not buying this. It's like, thanks.
He offered him for like $20 million, and my dad said, no, there's too much that's got to be done to fix this up. It's not worth it. It's a problem. He ended up selling it for $10 million.
Wow, that's unfinished.
And it's like, that's right. The reason my point of this conversation at that point was he told us, he goes, I did this house when we built it, we got away with the remodel. I said, how? He goes, well, we left 2 bearing walls from the original house. Okay. And the kitchen floor from the original house is here. I said, what? He goes, oh yeah. And he walks us to the back door, and there's a 3 foot by 3 foot wooden panel on the floor. And I said, what's? He goes, here, watch. And he lifts this thing up. And I look down, and 3 feet below me, below the floor level, is this yellow linoleum type of flooring.
Oh my God. So he actually built over it. Yeah. And I know what you're saying as far as, and I'm not a contractor, but I hear remodeling is different than actually building a new house, right?
Yeah. New construction permits is expensive and has lots of different prerequisites. You have to go. A remodel means you got a lot of leeway to do what you like. Again, within code, but you don't have to go through the whole structure. Has to be it's all different, and it's less expensive.
So he kept his 3x3 yellow linoleum floor.
Oh no! That's the trap door to look down into where the floor is. The whole entire goddamn kitchen floor is there.
Oh, really? Oh,
20 foot by 20 foot approximately there.
Oh.
And I'm like, what? He goes, that's the floor from the kitchen of the original house. I said, what? And I say, can I go? He goes, oh yeah, go ahead. So I lower myself down 3 feet onto the linoleum floor, and I'm looking around in the light with the light on, and it goes, and then it just stops. There's just no end. There's no wall.
Right.
That, and I'm looking, and I put my hand on the thing, and I just felt like just got like senses of like just energy, just like,
Right.
oh my God. I don't know if it was me tripping balls or if it was really something communicating to me in some way, shape, or form, but I felt like it was just like I was like seeing visions in my mind of the original house going, all right. So I came up and he goes, yeah, that's the original. I was like, wow, that's a trip. So the whole place was just literally, we bulldozed from one end of the property to the other and flipped the earth over 3 feet. And I'm like, wow. He goes, yeah, nothing else is remaining from the original house. Not a blade of grass, not a tree, nothing. I was like, holy crap. So as much.
Let me ask you, do you think that they brought the house down because of the notoriety or because just it was old?
Well, A, it was old.
Okay.
B, it was an ineffective usage of the property.
Okay.
It was like 5 acres. And the house was maybe 2,000 square feet.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of land around it.
It was built in 1940. Okay, it was a one-story job. Its footprint, it had a guest house. No offense to those that built it. It was a quaint little place. But unfortunately, in California, land is king.
Sure. I was going to say, that's a lot of land for California, 5 acres.
It was huge, and it was a flat pad of land. And because of where it was situated on the edge of the plateau that it was situated on, with the view that it had from the ocean, from the ocean all the way to the downtown Los Angeles, it was a total waste of lack of usage of space. Yeah, it was wonderful. It had a big backyard. It had a big front yard. It was unfortunate. It was ill-suited for the space. And as a result, it was like, come on, if you tear this little dinky-dang house down and you build one of these, in vogue mansions, hello, you've just quadrupled, if not, multiplied, your value has gone up 25 times.
So yeah, of course. He's like, okay, forget it. Yeah. That's historical significance, even if it's morbid, forget that. We're going to make money.
It was all about the money. And that's really what it came down to. It was all about dollars and cents. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to, that's as much. And another thing, they changed the address because in front of her property was a lot. And then the first house. The vacant lot, I assume, was owned by Mr. Altobelli as well. So when Weintraub bought the property, he bought the adjacent lot in front of that house, that land. And basically, because you cannot, under any circumstances, change a physical address with a postal service, he was able to incorporate the big property with the little property. But what happens is, because the little property's address is before the other address, that becomes the new address.
So he was able to alter the actual address of it. Okay.
They had to change the address because physically that lot was incorporated. When the lot supersedes that becomes the new address for the entire property.
The main address.
So that's how they changed it. So there's a lot of myths to the story of the murders. Oh, they changed the address. So no, they didn't. They didn't do it because they wanted to. They did it because they legally had no choice. When he bought the lot, that became the new address.
Yes, and I understand what you mean as far as that there's a main address as far as property is concerned. And after a few years after that was when you started building your house, right?
Yeah, they started tearing down the house in 1994. So by the time that I was building my house in 1999, they were still working on that house. God,
really? That long?
That long? They didn't finish that house till about 2010, I do believe.
Why? Besides what? No money? That's the only thing.
No, had nothing with money. No, the guy had more than flush with money. As I recall, I was told by one of the, I forgot what it was. I ran into one of the interior designers. And I say one of because I don't know if she was the second or the third, but she obviously wasn't. She can't be the first, probably the second or the third interior designer that was working on the property. And apparently, I was told by that person that they had, first time they started working, they built the house. It wasn't to his desires, so they scratched it, bulldozed, removed, jackhammered the not foundations, but different pieces of the of stuff that was put in and removed it. And I said, oh God, I said, that explains why I kept on seeing these gosh darn big bulldozers coming up, empty, and then coming out of there with tons of debris and stuff mounted on the back of them a couple of times. And I said, but the house is still being worked on. How long is it going to be? And she said he's gone through two different, that's right, she was the third interior designer. She said he's gone through two different interior designers and has scrapped the entire product to date to each time and went back to scratch.
So this place is sitting empty, basically under construction all this time?
It's not empty. The house is up, but it's look, when you're talking about this house, it was enormous. So it's not just the house, it's the back house, it's the backgrounds, it's the back swimming pool, it's all the stuff that we're going in. So there's a lot of different, so as I said, the new owner went through three different, she says, I'm the third, and hopefully I'm the final one, but he's gone through that many incarnations of what's going on here. So it didn't get finished till about 2010, I'd have to say.
That's a long time.
I could be wrong. It could be 2008, but I know it was definitely after 2005 and 6.
So what happened? He sold it, he lived it, he rented it. What did he do?
He's still living in it.
Okay.
The new owner lives in it. Now it's up for sale for $60 million.
Alrighty then.
Yeah.
And I take it he's never reported anything unusual there, right?
I wouldn't know. He's never have I heard two words from him about anything at that house. He's also rented it out to, let's see, Drake rented it out for 2 months and lasted 2 weeks, but he was thrown out because he was throwing parties there, and he was basically, from what I understood from one of the repair people, there was lots of physical property damage internally in the house that was sustained. And after 2 weeks, they basically had to have him leave because it was just too many cigarette burns in the carpets and other things that would get damaged to the point where 2 months in that place wasn't going to be tolerated.
Normal wear and tear was not what was happening there.
Yeah. And then, of course, last year about this time, I do believe LeBron James lived there for a month.
Really? And no, the reason why I was asking is, sometimes these longer term rentals,
right?
When there's a house, there's something going on, you see these renters come and go like real quick. Like, something's up. Nobody's saying anything, but there's a reason why you get these renters that move in, and maybe they even have a lease and they break it because. So that's not the case. And this,
I haven't heard. From what I understand, that the two major players that were most recently there for the past year and a half or so would have been those two. And again, the security on both accounts, the security teams were so vigilant and so present that I saw them in front of the gates with sidearms, and the guys inside the gates, the security, were having rifles right. I was like, all
Jesus, I swear to God, you know what that reminds me of? When you've seen these movies of these cartels down in Colombia, you remember you guys got walking around.
Oh yeah,
with machine guns.
Oh, and the walkie-talkies. Every time I walked out of my house when LeBron was here, it didn't matter if it was morning, noon, or night. And I mean, like 2 a.m, my dog would get up, my old dog, and I'd have to take her out to pee. And I heard the crackle of walkie-talkies. Crackling, saying, "Yeah, it goes. Got somebody coming out of the house, 4th house down the lane." Over.
Oh my God!
Every time if it wasn't me, it was one of the other neighbors. And I said, I had to ask him. I said, "Do you guys have to report every time somebody comes in or out of the house on one of the 4 houses leading up to
right?" Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like I'm in a gosh darn prison because.
Let me tell you something. I mean, all kidding aside, to me, I would be up to a point. It would be like an invasion of privacy in a way because. Gee, people, what if basically you're noting who's coming and leaving from my house? It's none of your business, really.
Oh, that wasn't it. And I keep on thinking, there's a reason why these guys have guys in front of the gate with sidearms and guys inside the gate with rifles, etc. What if with this type of dynamic involved in this person's life, what is the likelihood that, I don't know, somebody's going to be, that this isn't paranoia at work, but if it's physically reality of their life, what would that mean if, excuse me, hypothetically speaking, something were to happen? I'm 4 houses straight ahead from his house. If there happens to be a running gun battle,
collateral damage.
Bullets don't have names that they're targeting where they are to go. Sure. They go where they are fired. If there is such a thing as a running gun battle between them and me, and they're going down the street, one possible scenario is a likely scenario would be a bullet, stray as it might be, would be going into my home.
Sure, of course.
And I kept saying this, and that was what scared me the most. I don't give a shit what happens to them down there, but it's the lead up to my house that I'm fearing that something could fall out.
Sure, like let's face it, you hear a strange noise or you hear something pop, pop, pop. Most people come out like, or look, and
you bet.
They talk about being at the wrong place at the wrong collateral damage. You know,
that was my greatest fear.
I know I know you told me, I remember that even when you were under construction in your home, stuff started happening even then, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
During the construction, I personally experienced the sensation of not being alone walking around the property. Like somebody was going to come up behind me and tap me on the shoulder. And it's like, yeah, what do you want? It's like, no one was there. My laborers were having strange things happen. Tools were being moved from one room to another, and they couldn't find them. And they'd not blame me. They'd ask me if I had been there the night before and moved some of the tools. I said, why would I move tools around that aren't mine? I hate it when somebody does that to me, so I wouldn't do that to you. I'm not a prankster. And different things where they heard voices. And one guy was here late, heard voices and footsteps coming from the top floor and came upstairs to look, and there was no one there. And had just strange occurrences like that since, before construction, some 23 years ago now. Right.
And that's the thing. What I'm saying is that if a house is under construction, especially let's say that worker, and you're the last one there, or absolutely there's nobody upstairs, it's like, when you try to reason what could it be, it's a lot of things don't fit.
And remember, these guys were born 20 some odd years after the Sharon Tate murders. This is 89. No, not 20 years. God, that was wrong. Say 10 years after. And they're from San Salvador and El Salvador, so they don't know anything.
Yeah.
And there isn't this 1969 remembering Sharon Tate. There isn't this whole zeitgeist of once upon a time in Hollywood. There's nothing. She is not a blip on the radar back then.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't.
It's just a work site for them.
That's all she is, baby. So it's like, how do you explain that these guys are having experiences and they didn't know anything? They're God-fearing, but they don't know anything of the story of the house down the street, nor am I telling them any of that.
That's incredible, though. So did they ever come to you and tell you, hey, I had this experience, or were they afraid to tell you, thinking that you might be like, hey, what's wrong with you?
Well, the only time I ever found out was when at the end of the construction of the main construction, I assembled them there. And then I asked them, say, hey, look, you guys are going to be cut loose. It's going to be going on to the finishing side of construction. Has anybody had a chance, since I got a chance to get your information before you leave, you guys have been in for 2 years. Anybody, and that's when the one guy told me, and I'm going,
all right.
But of course, they'd be fearing for their job security.
Sure, that's what I'm thinking.
If it's not me and somebody else that says, I don't need this son of a, my goddamn job.
Is he doing drugs? What's wrong with him?
Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a disruptive force to my construction site. That's not to my advantage. You want to cut that out.
Yeah.
So.
Did you ever have, I don't know, was your dad there on the construction site? Did he ever tell you if he saw or heard anything?
My father, God rest his soul, was a skeptic. He didn't.
Okay, I was about to say,
So again, if something happens, do you think he's going to assert that this is something that's peculiar? Or is he going to go to the
everything
but explanation? Get out of here! All right, that's nothing.
Yeah. To him, it's like, what are you talking about? You crazy? Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So
So once you hear the construction's finished, and you know that there's a breaking in period when you move into a house. How did that go for you?
Honestly, it was like heaven. It was out of my cramped 2-bedroom apartment that I was living in. And I was ready. I mean, I lived there for 19 years, so I was ready to get the hell out. So it was just like, and remember, this isn't something like I'm just walking into. I'd spent 2.5 years on here. So here was home already. To me, the fact that I'm finally putting my personal belongings here, I spent nearly 80% of the past 2.5 years here at the house. So it wasn't like somebody's like, it's a new house. It's like, finally, I'm getting to move into. Finally, it's like the completion. It's like the final page of a book. Why? Right. Because it's not unfamiliar territory. It's the back of your hand territory. It's just like now you get to actually spend the night here versus just
right. And that's where I'm going with this. It's like, but now you're sleeping there.
Yeah. No, honestly, had I not felt that level of comfort in the beginning during the construction and everything, then sure, then coming in here and sleeping here for this night might have been a trip. But no, I was ecstatic. I was thrilled, overwhelmed with joy. Curious, I will have to obviously admit, I remember the first night stairs, curious to see if what was going to unfold, because obviously having been here for so many years, working on the site, having the knowledge of other people's experiences and my own experiences here.
You were thinking, okay.
I was like, okay, let's see. I was like, what's going to happen now that I'm here? And
because I'm not going anywhere, right?
Yeah, it wasn't like the gong being slammed and going, No, it was just like, it felt comfortable. I forgot. I mean, in my book, I wrote down what the sensation was, but it was pretty much just relief, a sense of accomplishment, completion. As far as trepidation towards the spirits are concerned, nah. Curious, yes. Yes, I will say I was curious. I was kind of like, so what am I thinking? All right, what now? What's the next thing that they're going to do to me?
And do you think that... Let me ask you something. Was there one moment or one event where you said, okay, this is not my imagination. This is not the wind. This is not the whatever, all the stuff that we go through, that you said that was something supernatural or something paranormal? Was there that moment?
Offhand, I can't specific. I'm sure in the book I wrote it down.
And the reason why I'm asking is, was it close to the anniversary? Was it something that, because sometimes we get so busy that, we don't pay attention to things. And sometimes something happens that you can't overlook it.
The first time I moved in on the 30th of August. 2002. So I was 3 weeks post anniversary on moving.
All right.
So as far as that was concerned, that wouldn't happen for another year or 11 months. In the beginning, it was just hearing things.
Okay.
Like hearing the sound of footsteps every now and then. It was just like, and knowing that it wasn't the dogs and the cats.
That's what I'm talking about.
Here and walking around and knowing that I could tell the difference in the four paws of the dogs versus the cats. Yeah, I could definitely sense that there was, they made their presence felt in very, very mild ways. Nothing to push me away and to make me feel
right. It wasn't like.
No, I never felt that kind of like trepid, like fear of. It was always like if they were present, if they made themselves feel present or their presence known, it was very mild and very unassuming and very non-threatening. And just like, we're here. It's like, yeah, I know you're here. So all right, I got it. But again, it also plays into my own reaction towards the activity when it occurs. It's like, all right, fine. I don't sit there and dwell upon it and harp and say, oh my God, it's tangible. Oh my God, I got it. Yeah. But because it's not tangible, because it's the moment that it takes place. In
other words, you weren't like.
Yeah, I don't sit there and obsess. Like I know so many people in the paranormal field.
You were living life. You were just living your life, and
And I don't relive the experience over and over in a place of coming from a place of fear going, oh my God, that happened. How did that happen? I'm like, all right, so it happened. Right. Big deal. Next. And people like, how can you be so dismissive of it? It's because as a kid, my mom used to say, if somebody, tweaks you, tweaks you in a way and you react, your reaction is going to create more responses from them to keep you reacting. Meaning, as soon as you start the momentum of a top spinning and you keep on flipping that, hitting that spinning top, you're just feeding into it. You're creating a dynamic where you're feeding into this scenario where it's just going to continue worse and worse and worse. And my mom says, as soon as you stop buying into it, not letting it affect you, people will stop doing that. And as a kid, I realized, if I let it, she said, let it run off your neck or your back like water off a duck's back. I was like, she goes, then you don't have people bothering you and trying to get a reaction out of you. So I took that to heart when it came to this spirit, saying, what's the difference between a spirit doing something to me or a person doing something to me? And I started, and this is the way I look at things. And people hate this about me because I said, there is no difference. If you react, they're going to want to continue to push your buttons and continue to make you react. So it doesn't matter what the source of the contention is, be a dead person or a living person, the scenario still is the same scenario, same dynamic.
Was there ever a time that you actually saw something?
Oh yeah. I've seen one full body apparition in the middle of the night in the house here 19 years ago in 2004 in summer.
I remember who you told me it was.
Right, Jay Sebring's apparition. I didn't recognize him. I've had other experiences where I've seen things darting by in the periphery of my vision off to the side.
Right.
And then I turn and I look and there's nothing there, but I know with all my heart that I see movement out of the left or right corners of my eyes and the periphery, that there is something there. And then I follow up and I say, oh, that was the cat or was the dog. And in a lot of cases, there was no cat, was no dog.
You can't blame it on the animal.
Can't discount it for the animals. And I know we've had enough times where I've had other people here when we've taken pictures and it's like, all right, who the hell's the guy with the gosh darn the Stetson hat on? And then look up and I look in the room and said, no one's wearing even a baseball cap. How can I have the silhouette of a man wearing a Stetson hat and no one else in the room is wearing anything close to that?
So who is the guy with the Stetson?
Don't know. I think it was a friend of mine whose aunt lives literally around the block from me, who lives in a house that's famous because it was built by a silent film star who was a Western silent film star who died in the house. I think he committed suicide. He was very, very miserable because when they transitioned to talking motion pictures, he didn't have the vocalization to make
He didn't make it.
His career went.
Yeah, I heard a lot of those silent film stars. The talkies did him in.
And as a result, he committed suicide. So I went to his house and I said, and I was at his house several years earlier, and I said, I mean, at his aunt's house, and I said, I walked in the house and I was looking around. And it's like, I turned my head and I saw a gentleman standing there full body with a hat on. And I looked back and I said, he's gone. I said, my friend said, what do you, I said, I just could have sworn I saw a guy looking like he's in Texas, like in cowboy attire with a hat, 10-gallon hat type of thing. He goes, oh, you saw him, huh? He goes, yeah, that's the ghost. And it's like, ghost of what? He goes, and that's who told me the story. And he says, funny enough, Stevie Nicks rented that house out before his aunt had bought it in the 80s. And then during the 70s, she was living there and wrote a song called The Man in the House about the ghost in that house.
There you go. So she saw something there too then.
So it's like, holy, I said, that's exactly what I saw. And he goes, yeah, that's him. I said, yeah. And so having had that experience, acknowledging him being there at that house and talking to my friend about it, I said, I don't know anything else because maybe that's the son of a gun.
Hey, he's like, I'm gonna go pay a visit. I'm gonna make my rounds.
Exactly. He's like, hey, I know David's house is here. And that's the thing. People declare me, oh, David's, claiming the Sharon Tate victims. I don't claim the Sharon Tate victims are the spirits visiting here.
Well, because let me tell you something, that, like you said, there was a lot of houses built there from what, the 30s and 40s, starting in the 30s and
20s,
40s.
30s, 40s. Rudolph Valentino's house is across the canyon from me here.
Right. This was when it was still Hollywood land.
There's lots of dead people, spirits that have been here, that have been reported here, have nothing to do with the Sharon Tate murders.
Right.
And I said to people, the house is like a portal. It's like a hot spot.
Sure.
And there's a little girl's voice that we've recorded laughing and commenting on somebody's remark of being here before. And it's like, who's the little girl's voice? I said, that's Gwendolyn. Oh my God, we recorded it.
I mean, what is it? Falcon's Lair. I think it's the name of
Falcon Lair, right? That's it.
I've heard a lot of stuff has gone on there, tied to that. So I'm not surprised stuff spills over.
Exactly. And the problem is people believe in the myth of the paranormal more than they understand the facts. And I say, I don't give a rat's ass about myth, because I don't buy it, because it's applicable to garbage, because it gives you a certain framework within which to work. And as soon as something falls outside of that framework, it's discounted and dismissed. And I go, maybe the fact is your framework of your theory is cracked, flawed, and irrelevant, and factually unbased on religiosity, where you die on that spot, you're going to come back to that spot and you're tied to the land. It's like, since when? No. Why does the spirit have to be tied to anything?
There's a lot of them that are not tied to. Sometimes some of them get tied to where they worked, if that's really where they spent their time, or they were happy. And there's other free floaters that, hey, they hang out. They're not that thing about that. It's only this one place, like you said, where you lived. No,
where you died. That's the place where you died. It's like, so what? Or where they're buried. It's like, why would a ghost want to visit their rotting corpse? See, nobody takes this upon themselves to start to question the theories and the mythology of the paranormal.
Sometimes people are creatures of habit. Sometimes, maybe they died in their house or they got killed or whatever, but maybe they spend a lot of their time somewhere else. And we're creatures of habit.
Somewhere else. Exactly. And I kind of say that spirits go where they want to go. There's no right or wrong. There's no ball and chain withholding them from going wherever they want. So the fact that we have so many different spirits that frequent the house, and people are like saying, he's exploiting the Sharon Tate murders, like the murders didn't have to, if even had the murders not taken place down there,
right,
this house would still be crazy haunted. She might not.
Obviously, there's something there in that. And there was never any construction there on that land at all.
Virgin land, vacant, never touched.
Yep. And I've talked about it a lot. And you hear about it a lot of times, David, about people building brand new houses. And they have stuff going on. And they're like, what's going on? And they don't get it. There's no history. There's no murders. There's no dying. There's nothing. Which, by the way, I tell people, once upon a time, people would give birth and die in their house, and that was the norm. It wasn't a morbid thing.
It's just part of life.
Yeah, people, like when you were ill or you were old, it was the norm to die at home.
Right.
Because,
there weren't big hospitals.
About where this was not an odd thing. So when people say, oh, because so-and-so died in the house, it's like, well, wait a minute. You know that once upon a time, the majority of people, even if, or you had visiting doctors who would come see you at home if you were ill, whether it was a disease or elderly. And a lot of times that was the thing. You died at home. You had somebody, family member, take care of you or something like that. So it's not as gruesome as it sounds when you say that about a property that somebody died there.
Right. My mom died in the house that I grew up in, and she died in the bed in her bedroom. She died of a heart attack. The point is, about 100 years ago, prior to 100 years ago, there were things called the death room in houses. There wasn't such a thing as a living room. The parlor was also called the death room, because that's where they would put the deceased person of the house, and people would come to view it in the home. And
the wake, the wake and stuff like that you would hear. And then from there, you would head to the cemetery and, do the burial. But that was very common. And I mean, we look at it now, like you said, through our modern perspective, and we're like, what? The person not only died, but you had a coffin in your living room.
Yeah.
That was very normal. It wasn't seen as like unusual. but we've gotten, like you said, we've built up this drama in our head whenever they say, and I say, you know what? And sometimes I'm going to say it. Sometimes things happen on land that there's no documented record. People get buried in the middle of the night. Nobody knows about it.
Right.
People go missing.
Right.
And that's why sometimes you have weird experiences on what supposedly is vacant land, and then somebody builds on it, and they can't make head or tails of it. And they go, you really never know whatever happened in this piece of land for X amount of years. All right.
That's right. That's exactly it. And that's the thing, is we don't know. And I always question why this, why that. And people get all up in arms about, so why do you say that? I said, because you guys aren't, because no one's willing to cast a stone at the theory. And I said, well, if you do, you might get further than just accepting what you've been told and kowtowing what somebody told you is true, which is not.
Let me ask you something. How long was Sharon Tate, and they weren't there at that house that long, right? They had moved in
7
there.
months.
But I'm saying it wasn't like, that's another thing.
March, April, May, June, July, 6 months.
6 months. Okay. So they were not even there that long that you could say, you know how some people have ownership of a property if they've lived there for 20, 30, 40 years, and, that they die and it's like, this is still my place. That kind of thing.
That's not exactly, there wasn't that type of connection. There wasn't years and years. It was she loved the house.
Well, that's different. Yeah, but
that's different. Being infatuated with the location and living there, it was a dream house and stuff, but dream house was only there for 6 months. She had been there when Candace Bergen was living there and visited, but.
Right. And another thing, people live there, they develop memories and have ties to the house and the neighborhood. But now 6 months is nothing, as far as.
Drop in the bucket. Exactly. No offense, Jen. I'm not trying to discount you. I'm just saying.
Well, and do you think that as time has gone by, do you think that they kind of see you as that guy, he lets us through and he doesn't give us grief, hasn't tried to exorcise us or drive us out?
I don't think that spirits, we can't go into my thoughts about the exercise and this and that.
Well, no, the reason, and I'm using that word.
I'm just saying, I think that the spirits kind of look at me as an advocate of theirs, somebody that doesn't have a vested interest in the outcome.
One way or the other,
but just wants the truth to be told. That I'm like their mouthpiece in a sense, because I don't have anything to gain by trying to represent them financially. I just want the truth to be known, and I want them to be respected as more than a footnote to history.
Have you ever had a negative experience though, David?
No.
Okay.
Hold it. Time. With the living, or are we talking about with the dead?
No, the living, forget it. That's a given. It's like, come on.
All right, fine. Then no, I've never had anything, never, ever have I had anything negative experience-wise here. Yes, I've been startled and taken aback by things and stuff that's happened, but that's just reacting at the moment as I do.
Sure.
Like, okay, and then afterwards, watch some of the videos on my channel. There's a memorable one that's from, I think it's 2 years ago. It says something about 1:45 a.m. ghosts knocking. I'm walking down the hallway on the second floor towards the stairs. I'm doing laundry in my laundry room, so I'm walking down, going upstairs to get a glass of water, and I'm about 10 feet from the landing to go upstairs, and I throw my hand up. In my head, I'm thinking, spirits, I got you covered. So I throw my hand up as if in response to what I thought and my gesture of, I got you covered, don't sweat it. I hear.
Oh my God, I lost him. He knocked himself out of the stream. Holy crap. Come back, David. Come back. David, come back, David. This is great. David, come back. I hope that it was enough. I mean, let me tell you something. If something went on with his internet because of that, it's like, it'll be like, what? Oh boy. Oh boy. Let me tell you something. I think it's you know what? I had totally forgotten in the whole scheme of this that we were on the anniversary of when these murders were committed. Believe it or not. I had and when he mentioned it, it was like, oh my God, that's right. That's right. This is let me see, I'm looking at it right now. Okay, August 8th. August 8th. And we are 5 days out. August 8th is when holy. Yep. And today is August 3rd, even though this might be a little bit. Oh, there he is. Come back, come back. I was
like to do knock, knock, and everything went kaput.
I know. I was like holy crap. I was sitting here going, huh? And then
I was going, what the fuck did I do? What did I freaking do?
I go, man, those ghosts, they have that lie.
I apologize. That's fine.
It was, let me tell you something. Talk about anticlimactic. It was like, this is excellent. You know, like
this is what I heard. You heard that and I didn't lose. Good.
Yeah.
Thank God.
I
heard knock, knock. And I'm walking down the hallway. So now I'm like 5 feet. I've covered like a couple of feet from the point I raised my hand. So I'm 5 feet from the camera in the stairwell looking at me. And you look at the video and I'm just staring at the camera like this.
All right.
Just completely like, what the hell was that?
Yeah. Okay,
and I'm thinking to myself, all right, can't be a burglar, because why would a burglar want to give the drop to notify me that he's in the house?
Right.
And then he watched the video, and I literally go through the entire. I think I show you like the 30 cameras 25 cameras inside, 5 outside in the garage camera. I show you maybe 10 different cameras throughout the house, the whole incident. So you can hear the acoustic signature of the knock, knock. And in one case, let me see, in one case, the room right next to the bedroom right next to the stairs where this incident took place, right before you hear the knock, knock, you hear a voice go,
oh.
And I'm like, when I reviewed the footage, I said, all right, this is all going on the gosh darn video. So the video is like an hour long, but it's crazy because you can hear the sound, the sound, how loud it is from all the different cameras throughout the entire house.
Okay.
But furthermore, you hear me then comment afterwards. It's like 5 seconds after, as I'm walking up the stairs, talking to myself, trying to rationalize what I've just experienced. And then I realized I didn't say 2 words out loud. It was all in my head, what I was thinking. That's right. Okay. And you can hear me say, son of a, I said, now I'm pissed off. I said, there's no safe harbor. I can't even think anything without you guys
reading your mind.
Reading my freaking mind. I was furious. And this is the thing that people in the paranormal field don't like to do, is think beyond what they know and start to run it through a different set of treadmill, or it's different treadmill to try to grind it out and try to fit it this way, slice it this way, slice it that way, to get a better understanding of what's going on. And I was like,
have they ever warned you about anything?
Oh yeah.
Really? Like what?
Well, that I want to talk about on camera. They've warned me about different people.
Okay.
Coming in, and about different situations, and about all right, here's a beautiful example. 15 years ago, 2008, March, I took my cat Tess, who'd been with me for 15, 16 years, to the vet. I come home. They did at the vet, they did a chest x-ray, and the vet said, look, the x-ray shows that her lungs are completely obliterated. I said, what do you mean? He goes, there's nothing left to them. I said, what do you mean? He goes, she's got cancer throughout her entire lungs. There's nothing. Because when it's time to bring her in to put her down, bring her in and we'll put her down. We'll do it quick and painless. I said, okay. So I got home at about 2:30. I'm hanging around the kitchen. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just going about my business, just washing it off because A, it's not today. B, there's nothing I can do about it. And it's just going to happen when it happens. And I'll go to the vet at that time. At 3:00, I'm in my dining room. I'm sitting down and I'm having a bite to eat.
Okay.
I hear this loud bang coming from the den, which is down below next, dining room, living room, den. I go walk into the den, and I've had these 8-inch tall, pretty heavy duty plastic Beetlejuice figurines on top of the aquarium, my 180-gallon aquarium. And mind you, this is March. They were put up in October.
Okay.
5 months earlier. And they've been standing there, untouched. The first incident of the figurine getting knocked over was on that day at 3 p.m. Because I go in, I look at the aquarium, and I see one of the figurines is knocked over, and it's on the ground now.
Okay.
I looked at my watch. I said, it's 3:00. I said, what the hell is this? It's 3:00. I said, that's never happened before. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I said, the spirits are letting me know that they're here. Wasn't the case at all. Fast forward 12 hours later, 3 a.m, I'm woken up from a dead sleep to my cat Tess coughing insanely. I didn't know what the hell it was. All of a sudden, I got the info. I got the sign from the spirit saying, Tess is dying. Be prepared. There's nothing you can do.
Right.
At that moment, I sat there, I looked at the goddamn clock on the wall, and what time is it saying after this voice has come through? 3:00 a.m.
Okay.
I sat there. I didn't think about what happened earlier at 3 p.m. I'm just in the moment present, dealing with Tess and dealing with what I've been told. And I don't know anything. I don't have a veterinarian there telling me this is the story. I'm just taking it for granted from the spirit that this is what's happening. And I'm thinking, well, I have no reason to believe that they're lying to me. And it'd be a pretty shitty thing to do if this was just an asthma attack or something.
Right.
And it turned out everything that they said that moment at 3:00 on the dot was exactly what happened. She passed away there on my bed. I could have sworn I just heard one of my cats meow.
There you go.
But that's a first, because I got my one cat right here. I have 3 cats. The other 2 are asleep in the other room. And it's like, I just heard that. So that was a sign from Tess. But she died. I spent the next hour crying my eyes out. I had her on the balcony with me, and I wrapped her up in a makeshift blanket. And said the next day I was going to bury her on the side of the hill from the house. And then the next day I started realizing, wait a second, 3 p.m. What happened 12 hours before? And I was like, oh my God, the figurine got knocked over.
Right.
And then it started to make sense that what happened at 3 p.m. 12 hours earlier was their way of notifying me that 12 hours now she would be dead.
They were kind of trying to prepare you, kind of.
And at the time I didn't make the connection. How could I? What would lead me to make that connection? Nothing. Not until after the fact was able to look back and say, holy crap. That was, and again, the fact that he also manifested, he or she, the spirit manifested at 3 a.m. and told me exactly what I was about to endure was just like, I mean, I had no preparation for it. I didn't think that the cat was, I was just thinking it was coughing. It's like, no, it was dying. It was basically taking its last breaths.
Exactly.
But
you thought at that point, you still thought you had more time, that your cat was going to live longer. You just didn't. They were kind of giving you a heads up.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't think that it was that imminent. And apparently it was very imminent. And
how about other times? Have they warned you about other things that either at the moment or later on, like you said, in hindsight, you look back and go, oh, that's what that was about?
Yeah, there have been certain things. I'm trying to think specifically what I can come up with that's really, poignant. Not offhand, nothing that they just said, nothing he'd like to share that isn't too private. Yeah, I mean, like I said, just certain things about certain people, about certain things coming up, they've given me forewarning on, and like,
what? I'm wondering if those guys that you were talking about that guard the property in and out, I wonder if they ever saw anybody coming out of your house thinking it was you and it wasn't you.
The problem was it wasn't like they were running a cat, like they weren't keeping
right, but they saw movement or something,
I'd love to have heard that from them. I would have asked, but and I didn't even bother asking them if they had any experiences there at the property because
they're not going to say anything.
Exactly, they're not going to say, because if it was, the last thing they want is gossip about Drake or about LeBron and the house. So no, I didn't. I never bothered asking about that. That would be an interesting question,
Yeah, it's like,
but like I said, I don't find spirits in any way, shape, or form to have any need to lie. People are the demons, they're jinns. It's like you drink too much gin and there are no demons except in your Bible. And you read that so profusely, it scares me what else you could possibly fit time in to do besides reading your Bible. My point is that spirits have left their physical mortal coil. And once they do that, so with it drops off ego. And ego is the only reason why people lie, is to protect one's ego or to protect one's,
something to gain from it.
Exactly. And that's all ego based. So like I said, I've yet to experience anything. Let's be honest here. There have been things that I've been forewarned about that I didn't want, that I didn't have any interest in hearing or wanting to know of, and was abjectly opposed to the outcome. But let's be honest. So what? That's life. Life is tough at times, and sometimes you're going to have to deal with some unpleasantries in life, and deal with them you will. And it's the forewarning of knowing that that's going to happen was the worst, because you think that if you are forewarned about it, you can do something to prevent that.
Of course, that's a human condition.
You can do. It's out of your control. It's not you to say. It's somebody else is making a decision, and you're unfortunately going to get the short end of the stick.
Do you think so? By now, do you kind of trust them when they give you a warning?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've learned the hard way. When I don't listen, and when I was a child and I didn't listen, I would find the warning was like, that warning was there to protect you, not to harm you. It was to help you avoid this, because there are situations within our control that we can choose not to involve ourselves with. And say, look, you're going home. You're going to your house is a couple blocks from her house. I'm already here. I'm going to go home. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to drive. Drive my friend home, please. I don't care what she says. You drive her. I should. And sure enough, nothing happens to them and nothing happens to you because they've taken them home. But had you done that, and you did do that, you hadn't had a car accident, then you learned you were right. It wouldn't have happened to them, only you. And we forewarned you, and you didn't listen.
Well, that's the thing. When you go on your intuition and you dodge the bullet, how do you know you dodged the bullet if you dodged it?
Because experience has taught you when you don't listen.
Right, exactly.
You walk right into it. The pie in the face because you didn't listen. And I listened.
That sounds like, a lesson well learned, as in the opposite,
Yeah.
How about premonitions, as in dreams? Have they ever come to you in dream time?
No.
Nope.
Nope. Nothing that ever looked like it was something that I could use. First of all, I don't remember many of my dreams, and those that I do, I try to apply if there was something, like look for an intrinsic core interest of point of topic or something that's there that's going to help me. No.
Okay.
For the most part, no. They don't generally appear that way.
Do you think that, because I've heard of people where they stay on the outside of the house. There's some that for some reason don't come inside. Have you ever seen anybody through your window or outside that you think you saw somebody?
I don't personally. Right as you start saying that, I start hearing laughter, saying, "Are you serious? What are we, like Superman? And you think there's some kind of kryptonite that affects us in a way that would repel us? No, we are not. We have no weakness. That's what human beings want to look for is, they're just like us. It's like the hell they are. When a human being can walk through a gosh darn solid brick wall, then you can talk to me about there's a similarity between humans and spirits. There is 100% no connection. Whatever you want to think is human speak, is human ego speak, they just said. Because in fact, what in the world do you think a ghost is going to care less about a rock salt perimeter that they're not going to, they can't go around this block? Really? I got news for you. Ghosts can go wherever they want. The top of the mountains, the bottom of the Great Barrier Reef, or the greatest of oceans. They don't have any limitations as far as I can tell. They are non-physical beings that exist on a plane of existence that is completely devoid of any of what we understand as rules. And therefore, they go do what they want, where they want, how they want. And I don't think that they're concerned with what we believe as far as the mythology we've created about spirits having to die, come back in the clothes they wore, or they're going to appear as they did when they died. That's just Hollywood horse manure. And unfortunately, it's lore of mythology that's been around for thousands of years. Unfortunately, it has absolutely only one point of basis: human mind, nothing to do with spirits.
Are you still allowing people? I know that before you were allowing people to come and spend time there to document stuff.
We were doing, the once every couple of months investigations here to the public. I have not done any of those in 4 years now, since right before COVID.
How about now that
no,
that restrictions?
Even though the restrictions are down, let's be honest. I just have lost the. Thank you. I've lost the verve to do it. The emotion to do it, the desire to. I hate to say it, COVID really, that 2.5, 3 year period just really knocked the wind out of my tires and left me flat on the ground. Doing it. And
you know what? The other day I was commenting that now is, because before there was all these Comic Cons and horror cons and Paracons, and during COVID, all of that went south. Bye.
Yeah.
And now is when it's starting to pick up steam again.
Yeah.
As far as people going out and guests and, that organization and things like that.
Right. I don't know. I just haven't. It really just, it doesn't, it's like we're talking about the 60s and the present day. It doesn't feel the same. It's a lot of it is just washed under the bridge. And it was that at that time, it was great for those few years that we were doing it. But, and also the fact that I was just going to make the comment that one of the people that was very, very instrumental in pulling these things on was Steve Hembry. And Steve's wife at the time was getting antsy about it. And he basically backed out. And then a few other friends of mine moved for different reasons. They ended up moving away. So a lot of the camaraderie, I'd like to say, that made it fun and interesting and engaging. And I had a good group of people that I was able to pull this off with and put this together with are no longer there.
The logistics, yeah.
And
I bet there's a lot of that behind the scenes.
I mean, people understand that people make and make everything what it is. Sure. And if you don't have the people that, and I'm not talking about pulling off gags or stuff, but to work and to do that for 8 hours for an evening and a couple of hours for setup and tear down, not having those people around just kind of made it less enjoyable, less of an option to pull it, of doing it. And because they were all gone, I was like, when something, everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it just felt like that was fine before COVID. I said, okay, fine. So they're gone, and this has lost its fun and its charm. I mean, it was like I said, it was like we would put together these private small little parties every couple of months, once every 4 months or something. And it was like, it was fun. We got a kick out. We had great results. The having them on, Phil and Mike and Steve and everybody else that was here, it actually, honestly, I'll have to say this, that having them here helped make things run smoothly.
Sure.
Answered a lot of the people's questions. actually helped bring a lot of the energies into the house, because it was just so honest and so fun. It was not like a lot of effort to do it. Yeah, there was a lot of effort, but it wasn't that, it didn't feel like strenuous. It was just, yeah.
Okay, right. Yeah. It wasn't like that I've got to go to work kind of feeling.
Yeah. It wasn't even work. It was just like we're having people come over and after they all started to, move away and stuff started to fall apart, I said, you can't go home again. It's just not the same. And they're not involved, made it feel like, So, yes, I do still rent the house out. Certain people have reached out to me through the years and have used the house for their events and stuff, but not like I used to do when we had the companies.
Well, the reason why I asked you is, like I mentioned at the beginning, Halloween, even though we're in August, Halloween is basically on the horizon, according to the retail business.
Yeah. We just had Midsummer Scream in Long Beach. And I went there 5 years ago and I was like, all right, so basically it's like a giant Halloween store.
Right.
And that's it. It's all pre-Halloween. They're selling tombstones. They're selling masks. They're selling the appliances, the devices, the mechanical devices, everything under the sun. And it's like a huge warehouse type of a thing. And I can't stand this.
Right. No, it's like, we're in August. It's not even Labor Day.
Yeah, it's like, we haven't even had Labor Day. Exactly. But the idea is that it's all become a commercial venue and marketing thing. And it's like, I haven't set up a Halloween display in this house for at least 2 years now. And I just said, I don't know if I have the energy, desire, and wishes to do it anymore. I've got all the stuff in one of the rooms downstairs in one of the closets. I got boxes of tombstones and bloody heads and stuff, but I don't know. I just don't, it doesn't, if it's somebody else doing it, fine. If it's me, it almost seems like, why would you do that to a haunted house, a real haunted house, and then confuse people? And they're going, that's kind of the thing. If you put that stuff up, the displays and stuff, is it really not taking away from the real fact this place is haunted? And that's what
I'm saying, as far as people that might be inspired to do it, if you're going to rent it, have, allow people to come over.
Yeah.
But again, that's why I was saying, it's like, it's in August because maybe you want to do a special Halloween event.
Yeah. And it doesn't, again, we've done events here that had nothing to do with Halloween that were events that were a little bit more interesting, to say the least. But, the idea that it doesn't have to be in Halloween, people usually are reaching out to want to do an investigation of the house and bring their team in and do all their, test their equipment. Because a lot of people don't know of a place that's got the reputation that my place has, where equipment gets tested. Like Chris Fleming brought the SLS camera here some 10 or 12 years ago, before it even became a thing, to test it here at the house.
Right. Okay.
The cat ball thing, which is now the paranormal cat ball activation device, actually started out here at this house.
Okay.
With Ron Iacovetti and Lourdes, his girlfriend. Got to be about 8 years ago now. He was here and they were leaving the third level, the theater room, and going upstairs. And I had one of my cat toys, which was only a thing it was a little cat toy that has a light inside of it. And when you hit the ball, the light activates. It does not light up unless it's physically made contact with it. And they were about 25 feet away, and Lourdes turns around as she was heading towards the door, and she goes, Ron, the ball is lighting up on the floor. Did you touch it? He goes, I've been standing here the whole time. At which point, and I have it on video, he decides to do a question and answer session, and just to see if possibly there's something connected to a spirit that is manifesting, making this light ball go on and off.
Okay.
And sure the hell enough, he starts, Spirit, are you here with us? If you're here with us, can you light up the light bulb?
And it did.
Boom, lights up. I'm going, and I'm watching the video footage from my office here, and I'm going, I don't believe this is fucking really happening. And 15 minutes goes by, these questions and answers, and it's responding accordingly. And I'm like dumbstruck going, holy crap, that's nuts. Later, a few years later, I'm looking to buy some more of the cat balls for my cats. Not for the price from $3 a day. Now it's the paranormal trigger device, and it's $8 a ball. I'm like,
and it's just a cat ball. I just want the cat ball.
Simple. And I'm thinking, what the? And it's now being touted as a paranormal trigger object.
That's funny. That is funny.
It's not the ones that not just the ones that I was interested. I had these little green light balls. There's all these other ones on the market. I'm going.
That's incredible. Somebody, man, they got to make their money somehow. It's like somebody put their thinking cap on it and said, "Wait a minute."
Exactly.
All these ghost hunters.
I was like, "What the fuck?" Yeah. And I was like, "I got to find the guy. The cats. My cats love these toys." I said, "Where do I get them? That they're not $6, $7, $8."
I don't want them for ghost hunting. I just want them for my cat.
Exactly. So it was like I couldn't believe it, and then I told Ron. I said, you started this whole thing here at this house because I know it's like unbelievable. I'm part of the stupid.
Let me ask you something. Have you considered doing a revision of when was it that you released your book? How long ago was that?
No, so the book's only it'll be 4 years. It's been, but it is not only. It's only been sold on one location, the goes to cielodrive.com. So I'm basically in the next couple of days before Monday, I should have a ebook out on Amazon and the physical copy on Amazon as well that they can buy. I will not have Amazon print any of my book copies. I will only do it myself. That way each copy can be signed or personally inscribed to the individual who buys it.
Okay.
So, but I don't want Amazon to print them up. It's just no thanks.
I know what you mean. But, no, the reason why I asked is that I thought it was a little bit before that, so you could do like a revised edition. Is like this is what's happened.
No, I've been told that I have to continue the book because the book. Let me just see. I think it's the last chapter ends in 2012. All right, so the last chapter is 2012. So basically, it's got 11 years.
Yeah, 10 or 11 years worth of material. That's not
so. I mean, I can do volume 2, and then write in there some of the things that have happened since this book, and fill them in on some of the things that have taken place here that are kind of unique because.
Yes.
I mean, nobody else pulled that stunt off with the cat ball before Juan at Yakivetti had it happen here. And I know for a fact that he goes, I bought a bunch of them and started using them myself as trigger devices. That's incredible. I'm like, and knowing him, Ron had written and had been interviewed in lots of articles. So I have no doubt that he,
that he started the trend.
And people start glomming on it as they do when it's popular. It becomes a thing, and it's,
So for my podcast listeners, David, again, what is your website address? Even though I'm going to have it in the credits of the show.
All right. I have youtube.com/David Oman, OMAN. That's my channel. Oh, duh. I also have, here, you can follow me on Instagram at the Oman House. I'm also on Twitter at House at the End of the Drive. Ghosts of Cielo Drive, and of course my personal one, the Oman One.
Okay.
There's the website, theomanhouse.com. On what is it? Also for the book, ghostsofcielodrive.com.
Okay.
You can get a copy of the book on
which is, like you said, you're the source for the book.
I'm the source for the book. I'm the only person. There's no ghost writers involved. Pardon the pun.
No pun intended, right?
It's all, as people have told me, and I've sold over 400 copies. Or correction, I think there's 1,000 copies that have been distributed for PR purposes, and obviously the copies that have been sold. But I've yet to get a single negative bit of feedback on the book.
There you go.
Most of the people say, something, I liked it because it's simple. It doesn't go into heavy-handed, scientific remarks about what's going on. You keep it very upfront, honest, straight, without any religious type of tinges or impingements of demons or devils or Satan. And
right. Yeah. There was once upon a time that a ghost story was just that, a ghost story.
Exactly. And I don't try to go into what do I think. It's like, how do I know what I think? I still don't know what I think. So why would I go write a book that would lead to a conclusion that I have any idea of what's going on here? I just told it straightforward in a pretty direct fashion where it's like, not to lead anybody to believe that I am in some way, shape, or form an expert in this, because
this was just your experiences then.
Exactly. And it cannot serve for others to say, well, let me call David and ask him about this situation in my house. I can only tell you what I've experienced in my house.
Sure.
And
let me ask you before I forget, have they ever gone with you outside of the house? Have they ever traveled with you? Let's say, and I'm not saying traveling, even just
going with you.
Ow. I knew it.
Yes. I had one experience when I went to a meeting in Hollywood with a distribution company about my film, House at the End of the Drive. And I remember it vividly like it was yesterday, and I'm laughing because, again, I'm not privy to what others are seeing. I'm only privy to seeing the reactions, which led me to go, what the hell's going on here right now that this guy is watching me? And this is the scenario. I'm in an office, in somebody's office in Hollywood, and we go into their conference room, pretty good sized room, probably 15 by 25 feet. There's a big conference table. It's about 4 feet wide by about 10 feet long. And on one side is the owner of this distribution company sitting in one of those beautiful chairs, office chairs. He's leaning back. And next to him, in a regular, little less office type chair, is his assistant. I'm talking to him, and I start noticing, at one point I noticed that my eyes referred to him, to his associate, his assistant. And his assistant's eyes got like this, like this. And then I watched him do this, going like he was tracking an object. The object he was tracking was from me here. He was doing like this, going.
So like something was behind you then?
Something go from one side of me behind me as he just like this.
Okay.
This is his eye movement going. And I'm here. So I'm standing here. So his guy's like this.
And you're thinking, what is he looking at?
And I'm going. And so after the meeting was conducted, like 10 minutes later, I said, excuse me, I said, I hate to ask you, I said, we're still sitting there. I said, what was that all about where you were like your eyes popped and you were like watching something? He goes, I don't know. He goes, I'm sitting and looking at you. And all of a sudden I notice I'm looking to the left and then I look back to your right. And all of a sudden I see this woman. And I go, He goes, yeah, she's got long blonde hair and she's dressed. And she appears over your right shoulder, and she's right alongside you here. And she goes behind your back, walks behind your back, around the table, and then walks towards me and out the door. And I'm like, I said, this guy goes, long blonde hair. And I'm thinking, the only person I know that looks like that is only one person. I don't have a girlfriend looking like that, Sharon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? He goes, and I'm thinking myself, that's Sharon. And he would never met me before. He didn't know anything about my backstory, about the house and the hauntings. And after that, we're talking, and I looked at the the owner of the company. I said, and this is just out of the blue, continue with her by my side. I heard this voice ask me some questions to ask him. I said, okay, fine. I said, I'm not going to disavow you and disregard you. That'd be the insult of insults to cut me off. So I said, you got to see your cardiologist. I said, you've got plaque hardening around your arteries. And I said, if you don't, I said, change some things about your life. I said, within 6 months, your kids are going to be one less parent. And he goes, how do you know this? I said, I'm just being told this. And when I'm told something at that moment, I have to pass it on to the person. If it's not directed at me, I have to pass it on to the person who it's directed to. And he goes, how do you know this? I said, I'm just telling you. He goes, well, as a matter of fact, I'm going to my cardiologist tomorrow afternoon to see him. I said, you better check on your plaque levels. You were this and this. And he was like, I said, you got a son and a daughter, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old or something like that. And he was like, how do you know this? I said, because she just told me. And I said, you better. And I just told him everything she told me. And he was like, okay. I said, yeah, you got to do that. I said, otherwise it's going to be a short life ahead of you.
Did you ever find out any follow-up on that? No,
because he basically nixed the gosh darn. I mean, yes, as a matter of fact, I'm being told, as a matter of fact, I did, because I'm just that kind of person. I can't just leave it alone. I remember, first I was more interested in my project with him, the movie, getting released through him, as I recall. But I do recall asking him, and he says he went to the doctor. His doctor said put him on some statins and this and that, and some cholesterol. So I said, good. I was happy for the fact that I was able to, it's put it this way. I'm enough of a human being to not put everything against one person. It's like their whole life and their personal life and my business life might be intertwined, but I like to keep them separate because the reaction to one bit of information, which was my personal life, might have been crushing. The other one was more important in a sense that I was able to give somebody information that was given to me for them to help them out, and hopefully they would be able to do something with that information. Whether or not they did or not,
that's it. Falls in their court.
It's out of my hands. I fulfilled my bargain, which was to pass on the information to them because they needed to know. And it wasn't to hurt me or to help me. It was just because I have to do that as part of the acceptance of the gift, that I have to hand that off to them because you can't play gatekeeper. That's not for you.
Sure. No, everybody, you know what they say about free will.
Exactly. And that's why I said I was upset on one level, but on the other level, it was like gratifying to know, because not everything is about us as what we gain personally. That's the difference between talking about the 60s and now. Back then, it wasn't so much about me. It was about me, but I can also help. I can also do better than just be a hoarder, be a glutton. And that's why I said I still attribute my senses. Like yesterday when my friend was visiting with her daughter to come, hang out, she goes, there's this bunch of guys in this car. They're racing up really. And she was all petrified. And I walked out and I said, they're young guys. What do you want from them? So I walked outside, and as they're driving by, they stopped the car. It was a very expensive car, but these well-to-do kids, and say 18 years old. And they started saying, goes, can you tell my friends about the house at the end of the street? I said, you mean they don't know about Charles Manson? He goes, no. So I started talking to them. I was like, what do I care? Don't sweat off my back to spend a little time giving these guys a little information and talking to them. And he goes, oh, no, I know who you are. I said, well, I've been on these shows. He goes, oh, my God, I saw you on this and this. He goes, I know I see on these shows. And it's like, yeah. I don't give a rat's ass that you see me on TV shows. Who cares? That doesn't define me. As a person, giving them information to educate them, to bring them up to speed about stuff that happened 30 years before they were born.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Courtesy of just being a human being. So why not give them the information? And not talking about my house, but about the actual factual incident that took place, so they could get a little history under their belt of the area.
Well, see, that's the thing that you have to realize. All these people that born afterwards, they're discovering it now. In other words, there's always going to be a generation or a set of people that they're discovering it now. Yeah.
And so my friend said, she goes, I can't believe you just said, I said, Lilia, you're the greatest thing that you have that works against you in life is fear. If you just treat people like you want to be treated yourself, you'll see that people aren't as scary as they can be. No. Yeah, they can. And I've talked to Manson devotees and stuff. And again, that's they're young and they don't know and they think this and they think that. I don't hold it against them. I just treat them just tell them the story of what's going on with what happened and stuff, so they can get an understanding of it. I don't sit there and worry about it, because perception of what you see on a physical level doesn't define a person who they are. And that means on both sides, you can see the most wealthiest son of a gun, walking around. He's the most biggest a-hole on the planet.
Oh, of course.
And yet you can see somebody that doesn't have a dime, yet they're willing to do things that you'd say they wouldn't. Just say, yeah, they will. They're willing to do that because they have a conscience and they're not motivated by the things that you are motivated by.
Of course.
And everybody deserves
your innate personality.
You have to,
regardless of whatever your bank account looks like. It's like, there's the moral compass. How's that? And some people it's well defined.
Exactly.
So, and either you have it or you don't, by the way. It's one of those things.
I know. And I guess, growing up when I took that to heart. My mom says, you're so sensitive. It's like, because I don't like inequity across the board.
Sure.
It's not
and
right.
You know what? You know what? And it has a lot to do, I hate to say it, with whoever our parents were that teach your children between right and wrong. Obviously, they can't control you for the rest of your life because God knows. But if you're taught right from wrong, unless you're a psychopath, you know. But if you are, usually you carry that with you for the rest of your life. So even when you do stuff that's wrong, your conscience bothers you about it. Like, I shouldn't have done that, or that's wrong, or, that kind of deal.
Or apologizing, admitting that you did something wrong, or that
Sure,
you said something that
course.
was misconstrued, and trying to alleviate the friction, saying, look, I've screwed up. I'm sorry I said that. I was misquoting something else, and admitting it, and just saying, now we can go, because we don't have bumps in the road that we have established.
No, there's a lot of people that have a problem with admitting they were wrong, or they did something wrong, or said something wrong.
Exactly. And that's, that's why I said to people that come here, that try their paranormal theories, and I said, well, that means your theory doesn't. No. It's like, your theory is a theory that has to apply to every situation, unless you are limiting it to certain situations. Then otherwise, you got to be honest. But people get very hinky about, this is my theory. It's like, it's a theory. It's not.
It's a theory. It's a theory.
Make money on or hold on to.
That's the thing. And anything having to do with the paranormal or the supernatural, it's just a theory. It's a hypothesis. Okay. And I know people have their own individual experience, and the people that are really honest about it, even if they've had an individual experience, it's like, I don't need to convince you. I know what I experienced, and that's enough for me. I can tell you about it, and if you don't want to believe it, or believe that there's whatever I think it is, that's okay. But they can deal with it. But yeah, it's anyway, David, it has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. Okay.
It's been
I hope you do something, though. I hope you do something. I hope you have like a either
from your
that
lips
or
to God's ears.
The Halloween, or what was it around that the ghost stories around the Christmas time? That was the best time for ghost stories.
Oh God, Who knows? I mean, I'm trying, but a lot of what I'm running up against is the fact that I'm the odd man out. That has, unfortunately, I'm the odd man out that lives in a paranormal environment for 21 years now, and I have a totally unique perspective to the paranormal that unfortunately that flies in the face of the drama-filled, hyperbolic storylines.
Well, you know what? For somebody though that wants to come, like you said, it's like the supernatural is not an on-demand thing. It's not. It's not. Somebody to come, forget the testing your equipment, just to see what you experience. There's no guarantees.
Right. And feel it.
Feel it. Whatever. Hang out and see what happens.
All right. Marlene, thank you so much.
It's been great.
Anybody that you think that might have the understanding of where I'm coming from, and say, look, I'd like to see this as a TV show about just a docuseries about the house, so that we can shed light on the reality of the paranormal versus Zach Baggins. Oh my God, did you hear that? I didn't even hear anything. I didn't see anything.
I have to. It's really funny because all these shows, every time they say something like that, you hear that? Hey, dude, they play this loud music. It's like, who's gonna hear anything if you just went down, down? Did you hear that? It was like, hear what? You just played this loud music. This like, I don't know who's gonna hear anything.
Theme music is what we call it. Theme music.
Yeah, of course, and it's like. And it's like, forget it. I know exactly what you mean. Well, all right, David.
Here's an example. I was watching Josh Gates on his new show. Was it not Destination Fear?
I know which one you're talking about. I know which one you're talking about.
The investigation show. And they're in this large cavernous jail complex. And I'm like, so some rotten piece of metal dropped and upstairs and finally fell apart and broke. And like, did you hear that? And you hear this bang. It's like, who gives a crap what you heard? I want to see what you're hearing. I want to see what you're seeing. I don't want to see your reaction of, oh my God, it's got to be a ghost. It's like, it
could be anything. It could be
exactly. But they go to this, and I say, I can't deal with that stuff. I want to be the guy that says, look, ghosts are interesting. They're interesting. We scare ourselves more than ghosts scare us.
Oh, sure, of course. But you know what that saying is? Follow the money. Yeah, sorry.
And people blame me. I'm explaining. It's like, I don't do anything to make any money off this gosh darn place.
No, but I'm saying
for profit.
Yeah, but it is what it is. I mean, yeah.
Marlene, if you ever make it out to LA to visit, you gosh darn call my ass up.
Absolutely,
I will. I'm coming out in a couple of days. You better be ready for a barbecue for me. It's like,
all right,
Marlene, you got it. You out here, bro?
Yeah, for sure. You got it. Until then,
absolutely.
Take care.
Thanks, Marlene.
You too. Bye-bye. Let me tell you something. I have a friend, and well, no, you know what? I used to go to California more often when my son was stationed out in the Navy in Coronado Island, and he was my youngest. He was my baby, so I was going out to California a lot more back then. But I just have one friend that's out there. But I have a couple of friends that are out there, and but you know what? Between the flooding and the brush fires, what can I say? All right, and there my dog's having a moment, and I'm sure earlier you heard them having their. They get sometimes, like anybody that's had little dogs more than one barks, and then the other one barks, but that one barked. And the first one, who knows what he was barking at? But then everybody else decides that they got to chime in, like keep him company with the barking thing. But let me tell you something. I think it's fascinating. What he's talking about. Like you said, he's lived there for so many years that you absolutely have like how's that? Like all, like if you hear these people that do studies, the best studies are the lengthier the study, the more valid it is, the more information that you gather. That's great, because obviously length of time, under different conditions, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I asked him, anniversary, is there something have you noticed, is there an uptick during the anniversary or something else? Well, and then again, this is assuming that whoever's there has any tie to that, the house where the murder took place, because like he's talking, he has free floaters that have nothing to do with that event. So for them, the August 8th anniversary doesn't mean nothing, So again, it's one of those things that you wonder about, like, are there any triggering, and I forgot to ask him, how about him? Maybe even his emotional state produces some type of trigger with them as far as manifestations or things like that. And that example that he gave about the cat dying. And in the scheme of things, like you said, you would think, why would these ghosts or spirits care a whit that his cat was going to die? The only caveat on that is that he was going to be affected by it, which to me points to the fact that they're aware or care. How's that? Aware and care of his emotional state. In other words, they knew that. Because let me tell you something, you can be forewarned about something, and if you really, really don't care, it's like, okay, so you told me that, I was going to get a delivery from FedEx. Oh, okay, whatever. Okay, but when when something's going to affect you emotionally, like obviously the death of the cat did, it was like almost they wanted to give him a heads up. Like what he even said, even if it was something disagreeable, which means, why would they want to do that? Torture him? No, I think more it was like his emotional level or his emotional reaction plays into what kind of manifestations they demonstrate around him. And that's very interesting. That's really, really interesting because, in the parlance of ghost hunters, we're talking here about an intelligent haunting. Obviously, in this case, since this is a brand new house, nothing's been there. It's not like you say the residual where, what's going on is just a repetition of something that happened there. A lot. Whether it be sounds, sightings, smells, but there's no actual intelligence behind it. Obviously, there is an intelligence to what he's witnessing, to what he's experiencing. All right. And I'll tell everybody, the feelings you get as, the human body is sometimes one of the best instruments there are when you do this type of work, because you will feel things that you can never register on any type of equipment. I don't care what it is. All right. And I've been on enough investigations to feel things before a piece of equipment has gone off. All right. And there's just things that barometers in us that we feel, either good or bad or in between, or just like I said, the advent of something that's going to make its entrance, that you will pick it up in your body, and no piece of equipment will do that. All right. Will do that. Absolutely. All right. So I'm hoping that he will do something for Halloween. It would be neat. It's like I was saying, there's a lot of stuff now finally that we're in that the COVID is in the rearview mirror, and a lot of businesses as far as like the entertainment, like I said, the Comic Cons, the Paracons, the Horror Cons, they're all coming back. People are going out there having a good time. You know, spending some time out there and go ghost hunting. Why not? Well, I'll be talking to you guys soon. Please don't forget to sign up for my newsletter on Substack. You go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com. I have links there. MarlenePardo.com, MPPellicer.com. Got links to everything, whether it's the video versions. I also have links to all the podcast platforms, and all the major podcast platforms, and even some that are not so major. All right. But again, if you want to listen to any of the shows, whether Stories of the Supernatural, Nightshade Diary, Supernatural Storytime, or Eerie News, and you want to listen either on the browser or download the MP3 file without commercial interruption, you can go to my websites and you can find them there. All right. And again, I have a lot of interesting guests, tons of interesting guests right now. As a matter of fact, I've filled up my roster for season 14 of Stories of the Supernatural. I'm going to be, as a matter of fact, I'm doing now the artwork for season 15, which will starts January into June of 2024. So again, if you have anybody you would like to see me interview, or if you want to be interviewed and you got something interesting to say, you don't have to be an author, you don't have to be an expert, you don't have to, nothing. You got stories to tell, I'm willing to listen. And I'm, like I said, I'm already looking ahead for season 15 of Stories of the Supernatural. Get in touch with me, Marlene at MiamiGhostChronicles.com. And again, you can go to any of my websites and you're going to find links all over the place for stuff like that. So until next time, thank you for spending this time with me. You are all wonderful. Take care.